Chapter 621, Martial Monarch's Inheritance. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know, nor was he interested in knowing, what was happening in the other third floors of the Sword Monarch's treasure. Presently, he was being suppressed by the mirror puppet. Since the mirror puppet kept a close watch on his flaw when his mood became anxious, it attacked like a storm, causing him to be taken by surprise and be unable to defend against it. Swish! A swift black-colored sword light flashed out from the mirror puppet's hand, and it seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that descended onto the spirit sword that Duan Lingtian had raised up hastily. Clang! The two Grade 1 spirit swords that were identical collided with each other, and they emitted an ear-piercing sound of iron colliding with each other. At the same time, Duan Lingtian felt a violent force come from the sword in the mirror puppet's hand, and it suppressed his strength that he hadn't fully mobilized yet. Instantly, the violent force from the mirror puppet's sword followed along the spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand to easily gush into Duan Lingtian's body. Even if Duan Lingtian executed the high-grade Earth rank defense martial skill, Earth Dragon's Barrier, it was still useless. The defensive chi barrier formed from the Earth Dragon's Barrier couldn't withstand a blow before the violent force of the mirror puppet, and it instantly shattered into pieces. The violent force gushed into Duan Lingtian's body and blasted him flying. Duan Lingtian was like an arrow that had left the bow and heavily collided with the distance wall of the cavern. Pooh! Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from spitting out a mouthful of blood, causing his countenance to turn ghastly pale, and he was in an exceedingly sorry state. The mirror puppet is like my shadow, now, I've instead lost to my own shadow. If it's spread out, I wonder how many people would laugh at me. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed bitterly. I'll search through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor once more and see if there's any way to overcome the mirror puppet. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and then he fled hurriedly when faced with the mirror puppet that chased after him. At the same time, the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor flashed within his mind. The rebirth martial emperor was a formidable inscription master, and this was undeniable. In the memories of the rebirth martial emperor was the method to set up the inscription formation that formed the mirror puppet, and there was also a great deal of information about the mirror puppet. But when Duan Lingtian seriously combed through and ordered this information, he noticed to his astonishment that the information was none other than lavish praise about how formidable the mirror puppet was. Once the mirror image formation is set up, then it would be difficult for anyone to flee the fate of being killed by the mirror puppet. If I'm the person that set up the inscription formation, then I'd naturally be happy as I watched another being killed by the mirror puppet, but the problem is I'm the person that's being oppressed by the mirror puppet. At the same time that Duan Lingtian fled, his mood became even more irritable. Could it be that there's really no way? Duan Lingtian continued to flash through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor that was related to the mirror puppet. But unfortunately, after a long time, Duan Lingtian still didn't find the slightest clue. Time silently passed by. Duan Lingtian was still being chased after by the mirror puppet, and his state grew worse and worse. Presently, Duan Lingtian was still ceaselessly searching through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. As the saying goes, the heavens never let down one who set their mind on something. This saying wasn't wrong in the slightest. After a day and night passed, Duan Lingtian finally saw a blurry memory amongst the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor. This blurry memory precisely spoke about the flaw of the mirror puppet. Besides being without a soul or feelings and being tireless, the most terrifying aspect of the mirror puppet was that no matter what the target comprehended or what new changes the target possessed, it would follow the target to learn it. The blurry memories gradually became clear. Besides being its strong point, this characteristic was also its biggest weak point. If the target intentionally caused chi deviation in the body to harm himself, the mirror puppet would normally follow the target to cause harm to itself. The target could stop in time, yet the mirror puppet wouldn't think so much, and the simple-minded mirror puppet would stubbornly go all the way until it caused its own destruction. These memories caused Duan Lingtian's eyes to light up. So it's so simple, to think that I was played by this fellow for so long. If it's up to me, this test isn't just a test of strength, but it's also a test of wisdom. More precisely speaking, it's a test that's a combination of strength and wisdom. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he dodged the sword strike of the mirror puppet that flashed over once more. Instantly, the origin energy in his body roiled. When Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force extended onto the body of the mirror puppet, he noticed the origin energy within its body was roiling as well, and the situation within its body was identical to his. Then I'll make a big gamble. Duan Lingtian's heart shook as he emitted an insane expression from his eyes. Subsequently, the origin energy in his body instantly charged towards the path it flowed from. All along the way, it destroyed many meridians. At this moment, Duan Lingtian only felt extreme pain. Fortunately, these injuries were within his scope of control, and so long as he consumed a great recovery pill later, he would be healed. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was able to notice that the origin energy of the mirror puppet was similarly destroying the meridians in its body. Bang! The origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body charged out, destroying his meridians all along the way. The mirror puppet followed along in his footsteps. It's almost there, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart and stopped the pulsating of his origin energy. The mirror puppet on the other hand didn't know how to stop, and it still continued to destroy its own body. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold after he consumed a great recovery pill, and he moved up towards the staggering mirror puppet. Sword drawing arts. An exceedingly swift sword strike howled out. When facing the mirror puppet that raised its hand slowly and whose strength was affected by its internal injuries, Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into a fierce tiger that instantly bit off the mirror puppet's neck. A deep sword mark was left behind on the throat of the mirror puppet, yet no blood flowed out. Bang! Right at this moment, the mirror puppet's body stopped moving, then its body trembled before instantly exploding and transforming into nothingness. The inscription formation was broken. Congratulations on passing the 6th test. As the first person to pass through all my tests, you've obtained my lifelong inheritance. Walk through the stone door that has opened ahead and you'll be able to arrive at the place where I live the last days of my life. The martial monarch's voice sounded out once more, and it entered extremely clearly into Duan Lingtian's ears. I've passed. Duan Lingtian started laughing and was extremely excited in his heart. Right at this moment, rumble, Duan Lingtian noticed that the cavern wall ahead suddenly shook before numerous hideous cracks appeared on it, and when combined together, it seemed to form a spider's web. In next to no time, the cavern wall crumbled, and an enormous stone door appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. Presently, the stone door was rising up. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, and the stone door had completely risen. A passageway was revealed behind the stone door. The passageway couldn't be considered to be long, and as he stood on the spot, Duan Lingtian was able to see the light at the other side. The martial monarch's inheritance. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath. At this moment, he was practically able to hear his own heartbeat. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, Duan Lingtian flashed directly towards the passageway ahead. Although he possessed the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor, but he wasn't the rebirth martial emperor after all. To him, the martial emperor's inheritance was an existence that was far beyond his reach. Now, this existence that was far beyond his reach was within his grasp, and he was naturally excited. After passing through the passageway, another extremely spacious cavern appeared before Chen Zai's eyes. The cavern was extremely large, yet it was empty. In the distance, there was a stone platform, and a person sat cross-legged there. Precisely speaking, it was a completely intact skeletal remains. The skeleton wore white clothes of unknown material, and even after experiencing so many years of time, it actually didn't decay in the slightest, and it was shocking. Duan Lingtian walked forward with large strides, slowly walking to stand before the skeleton and size it up. The skeleton was extremely robust, and it presumably was a robust male many years ago. Presently, the right hand of the skeleton was stretched out, the hand firmly grasped a sword that stood on the ground, a sword that was simple and unadorned. This sword, Duan Lingtian's eyes couldn't help but light up. He was able to discern that this sword was even stronger than the incomplete sword in his hand. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian saw a word that was inscribed on the hilt of the sword, and he was completely stunned. Lang. That was obviously the character, Lang. It wouldn't be such a coincidence, right? Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and took a step forward before raising his hand to touch the sword in the hand of the skeleton. For a time, Duan Lingtian felt this sword was icy cold on touch, and along with his spiritual force stretching out and fusing into it, he'd confirmed something. This sword is a quasi-royal grade spirit sword. Duan Lingtian confirmed it. Not only that, this spirit sword ought to have been refined by the rebirth martial emperor himself. Duan Lingtian, who'd fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, knew some of the rebirth martial emperor's habits in detail. The second lifetime of the rebirth martial emperor had studied the Tao of weapons refinement to the limit. Later on, as long as he refined a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon and royal grade spirit weapon, he'd inscribe a Lang character on it. The reason he inscribed this word was because the rebirth martial emperor was called Gu Lang, which were formed of the characters Gu Lang during his second lifetime. The name Gu Lang was the rebirth martial emperor's name in his second lifetime, and it had accompanied him for an entire lifetime. Of course, when the rebirth martial emperor's second lifetime once again stood at the peak of Cloud Continent, besides the few friends by his side, there were few people that knew his true name. Everyone respectfully addressed him as rebirth martial emperor. In the Cloud Continent of that time, the rebirth martial emperor was a legend, an invincible legend. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, he didn't refine many quasi-royal grade spirit weapons and royal grade spirit weapons, and he'd gifted them to the good friends or relatives by his side. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the skeleton before his eyes. Could it be that this person has some sort of close connection with the rebirth martial emperor? When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but shake his head and laugh in self-ridicule. What am I thinking of too? When the rebirth martial emperor underwent rebirth in his second lifetime, it was an entire 10,000 over years before now, and no matter how strong a martial monarch or martial emperor was, they'd probably have already transformed into a pile of dirt. But people will age and die in the time of 10,000 years, yet high-grade spirit weapons would be able to last forever because of their special material. 621 Chapter 622, 9 Tribulations Sword Control Technique. Duan Lingtian shook his head and restrained his mind that had seemed to have flown off into the distance, and he recovered his senses. Looks like this skeleton is that sword-cultivating martial monarch that left behind this treasure. I wonder what the inheritance he left behind is. Duan Lingtian sized up the white-clothed skeleton before him, and then he looked towards the surroundings yet didn't notice anything. There wasn't a spatial ring on the fingers of the martial monarch. Where's his spatial ring? Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he was filled with interest towards this martial monarch's spatial ring. There were surely many good things in the spatial ring of the martial monarch. But along with Duan Lingtian searching all around the spacious cavern, he didn't notice the spatial ring left behind by the martial monarch. Instantly, Duan Lingtian was slightly dejected. This fellow wouldn't be making a joke out of me, right? Duan Lingtian returned to stand before the martial monarch's skeleton and shook his head. Perhaps it's on him. Duan Lingtian stretched out his hand unscrupulously to pull open the white clothes of the martial monarch's skeleton, and although he didn't find a spatial ring within it, he instead found a jade slip. This jade slip flickered with a faint jade green sheen, and it looked to be of a much higher level than the void transmission jade slip. After flashing through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian recognized what this was. Memory jade slip. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath. A memory jade slip was able to remember an inscription formation, cultivation technique, martial skill, and other types of specific information. Ordinary cultivation techniques and martial skills were recorded in small books. But high-grade cultivation techniques and martial skills were all directly recorded on memory jade slips. There were even many inscription masters that would leave behind their comprehension towards the art of inscriptions for the next generation before they died. Of course, not every inscription master was able to do this. The preciousness of the memory jade slip was something that a voice transmission jade slip was utterly unable to compare to. He'd only just held the memory jade slip in his hand when Duan Lingtian heard the voice of the martial monarch in his ears once more. No matter who it is, since you're able to arrive here and obtain this memory jade slip, then you can be considered to have acquired my inheritance. I don't need you to take me as your master. It's sufficient as long as you don't let down my inheritance. After speaking so much nonsense, I still haven't officially introduced myself. I was an orphan since young, with neither father nor mother, and I was poor for half my life. I was only able to attain the martial monarch stage from successive fortuitous encounters. My acquaintances call me White Clothes, most people call me Tempest Sword Monarch or White Clothes Sword Monarch. In my entire lifetime, due to my admiration of the rebirth martial emperor that had suddenly vanished a few thousand years ago, I've touched upon both the Tao of weapons refinement and the Tao of inscriptions. Of course, I'm far inferior to senior rebirth martial emperor. This memory jade slip contained the setup and utilization method of a few types of inscription formations that I'm most skilled in, and besides that, it also contains the sword skill I cultivated, the 9 Tribulation Sword Control Technique. After you obtain this jade slip, you can take the 3 profundity fragments in my skull. I hope that it's able to assist you in attaining the martial monarch stage in the future. Besides that, you can take away the spirit sword in my hand as well. This spirit sword is a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon that's practically extinct in Cloud Continent, and it's rare in the world. Until you have the strength to protect it, try your best not to utilize it in public. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Now that I speak of it, the thing I love the most in my lifetime is this quasi-royal grade spirit sword, because it's the work of Senior Rebirth Martial Emperor that I admire the most. Before Senior Rebirth Martial Emperor, there was no spirit weapon at the quasi-royal grade and above, but after Senior Rebirth Martial Emperor, it's probably difficult for another spirit weapon at the quasi-royal grade or above to appear, so, you have to properly take care of this sword. The last words contained within the memory jade slip stopped here. I never imagined that this white-clothed sword monarch was an admirer of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, but, I believe it when he said there wasn't a quasi-royal grade or above spirit weapon, yet it's not necessarily true that it's difficult for another spirit weapon at the quasi-royal grade or above to appear after the Rebirth Martial Emperor. As he finished muttering to himself, a wisp of a smile appeared on the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth. So long as his cultivation stepped into the martial monarch stage, he would be able to condense a quasi-royal grade weapon fire and would be able to refine quasi-royal grade spirit weapons. Not to mention a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon, if I'm able to attain the martial emperor stage, then even a royal grade spirit weapon is easy to refine. Duan Lingtian had a confident expression. He'd completely inherited the lifetime worth of memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, and amongst those memories included the weapons refinement experience and methods of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. So long as his cultivation and materials were sufficient, refining a high-grade spirit weapon was extremely easy. Based on what this white-clothed sword monarch said, he's actually a figure from a few thousand years ago. Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's attention returned to the memory jade slip in his hands. Along with Duan Lingtian's spiritual force touching it, vast amounts of information directly gushed into Duan Lingtian's mind. Fortunately Duan Lingtian was prepared, otherwise, just this moment would have probably knocked Duan Lingtian out. In next to no time, he'd ordered up all this information. Inscription formation, isn't this the inscription formation that's able to induce the 9 swords to combine into one? Even if it was the Rebirth Martial Emperor from all those years ago, he had no fortune in being able to study this inscription formation, yet I never imagined that this white-clothed sword monarch would actually know how to set it up. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be surprised when he ordered this portion of memories. Besides this inscription formation, Duan Lingtian disregarded the other inscription formations. Those inscription formations were all contained within the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, and only this Split Unite inscription formation wasn't. The Split Unite inscription formation was the inscription formation contained within the Jade Sword that was the key to the Sword Monarch's treasure. It was precisely because of the existence of this inscription formation that the Jade Sword was able to split into 9 and unite into one once again. There's also this sword skill. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian moved his attention to the sword skill that the white-clothed sword monarch had left behind. This sword skill was actually a heaven-rank sword skill. It stressed upon a single spirit sword being split into 9 and controlling these 9 spirit swords to fight against one's enemies. This sword skill needs to be combined with that Split Unite inscription formation, but the white-clothed sword monarch had inscribed the Split Unite inscription formation on that quasi-royal grade spirit sword, the weapon he carried in his possession at all times. Duan Lingtian returned to his senses, and his gaze descended onto the spirit sword in the hand of the white-clothed sword monarch. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian lightly took the sword in his hand. Relying on the information left behind by the white-clothed sword monarch, Duan Lingtian was skillful in the control of the Split Unite inscription formation to the point he controlled it extremely casually. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's hand shook, and his origin energy fused into the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. In the next moment, a bright light flashed past the spirit sword, and it transformed into 9 spirit swords. This 9 tribulation sword control technique is interesting as it actually requires to be combined with the art of sword control, but this art of sword control requires the combined usage of spiritual force to execute it. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, following the information to learn the art of sword control, and with a raise of his hand, he tossed the 9 quasi-royal grade spirit swords in the air. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force swept out to envelop these 9 spirit swords, and he intended to control these spirit swords to float in the air. But unfortunately, with Duan Ling Tian's current spiritual force, he was barely able to make one spirit sword float in the air. Moreover, it was even shaking and would fall down at any moment. As for the other spirit swords, they'd instead directly fallen to the ground and caused a wave of clamorous sound to resound out. This 9 tribulations sword control technique is slightly interesting, although the strength of the 9 swords are unable to overlap and add on to each other, but when the 9 swords attack from all around, it's instead able to make others unable to guard against it. Duan Ling Tian has merged with the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor, causing his eyesight to be discerning, and he realized how extraordinary the 9 tribulations sword control technique was. To a certain extent, this 9 tribulations sword control technique was even not inferior to the best high-grade heaven rank offense martial skill in the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was a high-grade heaven rank offense martial skill that was contained within the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique that Duan Ling Tian cultivated. He was able to cultivate it after the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique had reached the 7th form, and its might was extremely terrifying. With my current strength, no matter if it is the 9 Tribulation Sword Control Technique or the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, they're both impossible to cultivate. I should think about this in the future. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian returned to his senses, and his gaze once again descended onto the 9 spirit swords. His spiritual force stretched out to touch the inscription formation in one of the spirit swords, and instantly, the 9 spirit swords once again united into one. Unfortunately, after this quasi-royal grade spirit sword is split into 9, it can't be used by itself, otherwise, it would be equivalent to having 9 quasi-royal grade spirit swords in my possession. Duan Ling Tian was slightly disappointed about this. But he knew that it was impossible for such an abnormal thing to appear in this world. An inscription formation being able to split a single quasi-royal grade spirit sword into 9, and they were even able to be utilized by themselves, wouldn't an inscription formation like that be heaven-defying? If an inscription formation like this really existed, then it would probably not even be tolerated by the heavens. After the spirit sword splits into 9, it can only be jointly used by a single person. Combined with the 9 tribulation sword control technique, the 9 swords can sweep out from all directions, and any one of the swords possess the amplification strength of a quasi-royal grade spirit sword. When he thought of how he'd have the chance in the future to rely on the quasi-royal grade spirit sword that has split into 9 to execute the 9 tribulation sword control technique, Duan Ling Tian felt slightly excited in his heart. Gradually, Duan Ling Tian's mood calmed down. His gaze descended onto the white-clothed skeleton before his eyes. He still remembered the last words of the white-clothed sword monarch. In those last words, he'd asked Duan Ling Tian to take the 3 profundity fragments from his remains. 3 profundity fragments. Earlier, within the words left behind by the white-clothed sword monarch, he seemed to have mentioned that people addressed him as the Tempest Sword Monarch, Tempest, Wind, Lightning, Sword. Could it be that the 3 types of profundity fragments in his skull is a wind profundity fragment, a lightning profundity fragment, and a sword profundity fragment? When he thought up to here, Duan Ling Tian's mood that had just calmed down surged once more. In the next moment, Duan Ling Tian's hands that were practically trembling stuck into the skull of the white-clothed sword monarch to touch that 3 profundity fragments. Ah! Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian felt a fierce and swift aura sweep towards his hand, and it tore open his hand. He hurriedly circulated his origin energy before being able to withstand this swift and fierce aura. 622 Chapter 623, Greed. After he stopped the bleeding with his origin energy, Duan Ling Tian who'd taken a lesson hurriedly coiled origin energy around his hand before stretching his hand out once more. This time, he withdrew the 3 fragments in one go. Just from outward appearance, these fragments were slightly similar to concept fragments, but there were extra strands of material aura that were like flames atop it. One of the fragments was completely jade green, and its surroundings flickered with jade green flames. Wind profundity fragment. With just a glance, Duan Ling Tian who'd fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor was able to recognize this profundity fragment. Another fragment was completely deep violet in color, and its surroundings flickered with violet-colored flames that faintly contained some bolts of lightning striking about within it. Lightning profundity fragment, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart as he realized that his guess earlier was correct. The last fragment was completely translucent and emitted a fierce and swift sword chi, and it was precisely a sword profundity fragment. All these 3 profundity fragments are actually 3rd-level profundity fragments. Looks like that white-clothed sword monarch was an extraordinary figure during his time. Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. All three profundities had been comprehended to the third level. Such comprehension ability could be considered to be extraordinary even amongst the numerous martial monarchs. My gains aren't bad. Duan Lingtian put away the three profundity fragments in his spatial ring, and a brilliant smile suffused his face. But, the smile on his face was quickly restrained. I wonder how Shuai, Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold are now. Didn't that white-clothed sword monarch say I could leave once I obtained his inheritance? Where do I leave from? Duan Lingtian started looking all around. In the end, he noticed something at a cavern wall at the side. A small stone that bulged out had actually appeared suddenly on the cavern wall to the right. Earlier, Duan Lingtian didn't notice it. Duan Lingtian walked out and patted the small stone, and he noticed that it could be moved. Instantly, Duan Lingtian pressed the small stone down. In the next moment, rumble, rumble, the cavern wall beside the small stone shook abruptly before directly splitting open and crumbling in the next moment. Subsequently, a stone door appeared and slowly rose up. After a short moment, another pitch-black passageway had appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. This ought to be the exit. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up, and he directly walked in. In his hand, a raging flame that was violet in color with copper edged appeared out of thin air in his hand, and it was precisely the weapon flame he used to illuminate the path. If someone recognized this weapon flame and saw this scene, the person would surely be angered to the point of spitting blood. The grade 3 weapon flame that was violet in color with copper-colored edge was used to illuminate the path, and it was simply a reckless waste of God's given gifts. But Duan Lingtian didn't care about all this. Not long after, Duan Lingtian walked to the end of the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a closed stone door. Knock, knock. Duan Lingtian knocked the stone door and was able to notice that the stone door was constructed from special materials, and even a void interpretation stage or void transformation stage martial artist would probably find it impossible to harm with brute force. There ought to be a switch here. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian started looking around. In the end, Duan Lingtian found a small stone that stuck out on the cavern wall at the side of the stone door. I wonder where the stone door leads to. Duan Lingtian thought as he stretched out his hand to press onto the small stone. Instantly, rumble, rumble, At this moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that it wasn't just the stone door before him that slowly rose up, an enormous bang had sounded out from the end of the passageway behind him as well. Besides opening this stone door, this switch also closes the stone door at the other side. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed that the stone door before him had already been opened, and the ground outside the stone door was covered in bits of rocks. Duan Lingtian walked out with large strides. Only now did he notice that the stone door he walked out from now was covered by a layer of thick and heavy cavern wall as well. The opening of the stone door caused the cavern wall outside to shatter. Brother Lingtian. Right at this moment, a familiar voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ear. Duan Lingtian looked over to the source of the voice, and he noticed a robust middle-aged man coming over from afar and had arrived before him after a short moment. Dong Ming. Duan Lingtian recognized the person that had arrived, and it was precisely the first possessor of a jade sword that he'd contacted that day, Dong Ming. Bang! Right at this moment, another enormous bang sounded out. Duan Lingtian noticed that the stone door at the end of the passageway he just came out from actually closed up once more. Dong Ming was startled, and then he looked at Duan Lingtian before speaking with an expression of admiration. Brother Lingtian, I really admire you for actually being able to enter the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure. You didn't go in. Duan Lingtian was stunned and couldn't refrain from asking. Dong Ming laughed bitterly. When I arrived at the end of the second level, all 10 of the stairways had already been entered by someone. Only 10 people may enter the third level, and because it was already too late when I arrived, I missed the opportunity. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding, and he recalled now that it was exactly like this. This place is. Duan Lingtian sized up the surroundings before noticing that this was the first level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, whereas, high above in the sky not too far ahead was condensed balls of dusky mist. That place was precisely the entrance and exit of the Sword Monarch's treasure that was situated at the depths of the sea. The door to the Sword Monarch's treasure was there. Where are the others? Duan Lingtian looked around the surrounding, yet only saw Dong Ming, and he couldn't help but ask curiously. There are another 6 people like me who were unable to enter the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure. They're probably at the second level now, said Dong Ming. This time, there were 7 people that didn't have the fortune of entering the 3rd level. Amongst the 10 positions to enter the 3rd level, Duan Lingtian, Han Shuinai, the little gold mouse, and the 2 little pythons had already occupied 5 positions. The other remaining 5 positions were divided amongst 12 people, so there naturally would be 7 people that obtained nothing. Why aren't you waiting in the 2nd level? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Since I've already missed the opportunity to enter the 3rd level, staying in the 2nd level is useless as well, so I returned to the 1st level, but, Elder who entered into the 3rd level, so I didn't come for nothing in the end. As he finished speaking, Dongming was slightly excited. He entered the 3rd level, so what are you excited about? Duan Lingtian's face froze momentarily. Dongming said with a smile, Brother Lingtian, there's something you don't know, I and Elder who had once discussed before that no matter what we obtain, we would share it equally. What you mean is, he has to share half of the treasures he obtained with you? Duan Lingtian asked. Yes. Dongming nodded. Duan Lingtian frowned, wanting Elder Hu to share half of the treasures with Dongming. Would he be so good? Duan Lingtian didn't hold the slightest expectation. Why haven't Shuinai and the others come out? Duan Lingtian and Dongming chatted idly for some time, and he couldn't help but frown when he noticed that Shuinai, the little gold mouse, and the 2 little pythons still hadn't come out, and his face was suffused with a wisp of worry. Brother Lingtian, is the 3rd level extremely dangerous? Dongming's heart jerked when he saw the worry on Duan Lingtian's face. It isn't just dangerous, it's simply lethal. When he heard Dongming, Duan Lingtian recalled the scenes he encountered in the 3rd level, and he couldn't help but feel a slight lingering fear in his heart for some time. Dongming's face went grim when he heard this, and he spoke with slight worry. I wonder how Elder Hu is now. If Elder Hu died in the 3rd level, then he would really be considered to have come for nothing this time. Brother Lingtian has returned. Suddenly, a surprised exclaim sounded out from afar. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian saw 6 people moving directly towards him. Amongst these 6 people, 3 of them had once received a favor from him. On the way here, because of these comparatively lower cultivations, it was difficult for the origin energy barrier that arose on the surface of these 3 people's bodies to withstand the pressure at the depths of the ocean, and it was he who'd allowed them to ascend the 3-eyed flame tigers back to seek shelter. The cultivations of these 3 people were all at the 4th level of the void initiation stage. Now, the 3 of them were slightly warm-hearted as they looked at Duan Lingtian, whereas, when the other 3 people looked at Duan Lingtian, traces of a sheen of greed was mixed within the depths of their gaze. Although it was concealed extremely deeply, it was still clearly noticed by Duan Lingtian. The cultivations of these other 3 people were all at the 5th level of the void initiation stage. Presumably, it was exactly because their cultivations were low that they weren't able to arrive at the end of the 2nd level in time and missed the opportunity to enter the 3rd level. Brother Lingtian, did you obtain anything in the 3rd level? One of the 3 people that treated him warmly asked curiously. It's not bad. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded. Congratulations, Brother Lingtian. The other 2 people congratulated Duan Lingtian in unison. But in next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed their expressions freeze, and it seemed as if they'd suddenly recalled something. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian noticed that a sheen of conflict flickered within the depths of their eyes. In the end, the sheen of conflict vanished and was replaced by greed. The smile on Duan Lingtian's face didn't change, yet the depths of his gaze contained slight coldness. According to his guess, these 3 people that originally treated him warmly had probably received the voice transmission from the other 3 people now, and they'd formed some sort of agreement. The facts proved that Duan Lingtian had entirely guessed correctly the intentions of the other 3 people. In the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian was surrounded by the 6 of them. What are all of you doing? Dongming's face went grim when he saw the scene before him, and he asked with a shout. Dongming, this matter is unrelated to you, and it's best if you stay at the side, otherwise, we'll kill you as well. One of the 5th level void initiation stage martial artists swept Dongming with a cold and indifferent gaze as he threatened. This person was exactly one of the 3 5th level void initiation stage that aroused greed towards Duan Lingtian in their hearts earlier. HMPH. Dongming, I advise you to mind your own business. You're only at the 5th level of the void initiation stage, yet we have 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists here. Any 2 of us is sufficient to annihilate you. Another person spoke out. Dongming's face sank as he naturally knew that what the 2 people said was the truth. If he helped Duan Lingtian, he would probably be unable to escape death. Don't all of you forget of young Miss Shuinai. That's by Brother Ling Tian's side. If all of you dare lay a hand on him, young Miss Shuinai would absolutely not let all of you off. Dong Ming took a deep breath and brought up Han Shuinai. As soon as Dong Ming finished speaking, those three people that were incited to deal with Duan Ling Tian went pale. But in next to no time, they gritted their teeth and became resolute. Wealth comes from danger. One is unable to catch a tiger's cubs without venturing into the tiger's den. They were going all out. 623 Chapter 624, The Might of the Quasi-Royal Grade Spirit Sword. Young Miss Shuinai, so long as he's dead, and we burn his corpse to obliterate all traces, how will young Miss Shuinai know that it's we who kill him? Burn my corpse to obliterate all traces. Duan Ling Tian's expression remained unchanged, yet the cold light in the depths of his gaze became even deeper. If Brother Ling Tian didn't allow the three of you to seek refuge on the back of the three-eyed flame tiger earlier, all of you would be utterly unable to arrive at this sword monarch's treasure. Now, all of you are turning hostile and becoming ungrateful bastards. Dong Ming stood by Duan Ling Tian's side and spoke with an enraged expression. The expressions of the three fourth-level void initiation stage martial artists went slightly grim, and they glared fiercely at Dong Ming as if they were blaming Dong Ming for talking too much. Dong Ming, I'll give you the time of 5 breaths to get away from Duan Ling Tian, otherwise, you can be buried with him. A 5th-level void initiation stage martial artist looked at Dong Ming and threatened. Dong Ming, FK off. The other 2 5th-level void initiation stage martial artists shouted out with a grim voice. Dong Ming's expression was unsightly, yet he didn't have any intention of moving away. Dong Ming, go on, this matter isn't related to you in the first place. Duan Ling Tian looked at Dong Ming as he shook his head and smiled. Brother Ling Tian, I don't care if you take me as your friend or not, but I've taken you to be my friend. Since you're my friend and you've encountered danger, then I naturally can't stand idly by. Otherwise, I, Dong Ming, would be not much of a man. Dong Ming became more agitated the more he spoke. Duan Ling Tian was slightly moved as he never expected that Dong Ming's temper would be so willful. But it was extremely likable to him. Looks like Dong Ming you really want to be buried along with him. It's good this way, as we don't have to worry that you would inform that little girl after you're dead. One of the 5th-level void initiation stage martial artists that surrounded Duan Ling Tian and Dong Ming sneered. Die. The gazes of the other 2 5th-level void initiation stage martial artists emitted cold lights. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Origin energy raged on the bodies of the other 3 4th-level void initiation stage martial artists, and their gazes stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian. Only greed remained in the depths of their gazes. All of you want to kill me so badly. Duan Ling Tian looked at the 3 4th-level void initiation stage martial artists, and he couldn't help but laugh with a laughter that was extremely natural. From the beginning until the end, he had a calm expression when facing the 3 4th-level void initiation stage and 3 5th-level void initiation stage martial artists that had ill intentions, and he wasn't terrified in the slightest. Duan Ling Tian, you've helped us and we admit your favor. If you want to blame something, then you can only blame yourself for taking something you shouldn't have. One of the 4th-level void initiation stage martial artists summoned the courage to say this. Exactly. The other 2 4th-level void initiation stage martial artists hurriedly joined in. Something that I shouldn't have taken. What are all of you talking about? Duan Ling Tian was stunned. We're naturally talking about the treasures you obtained in the 3rd level of the Sword Monarch's treasure. One of the 5th-level void initiation stage martial artists looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression of greed, and he stuck out his tongue to lick his dry lips. This caused Duan Ling Tian to be unable to refrain from frowning, and he felt slightly disgusted. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian started laughing. The treasures I obtained in the 3rd level seemed to have been obtained by me by relying on my own ability, right? On what basis are the 6 of you taking it from me? On the basis that we're stronger than you. Origin energy on another 5th-level void initiation stage martial artist skyrocketed as 7 ancient horned dragons condensed into form above him and were accumulating force while waiting to be deployed. Even if we don't utilize concept and only rely on origin energy and our spirit weapons, our strength is sufficient to easily annihilate a 3rd-level void initiation stage kid like you. The last 5th-level void initiation stage martial artist's origin energy started to rage as well, and he sneered at Duan Ling Tian as 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared above him. When he saw the situation was about to break into a fight at any moment, Dong Ming's expression went grim, and he took a stride forward to protect Duan Ling Tian behind him. Origin energy raged atop his body as 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes similarly appeared in the sky above him. But, a 5th level void initiation stage martial artist like him facing 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists at the same time, it seemed to be in vain no matter how one looked at it. Dong Ming, since you want to stand out forcefully, then we'll kill you first before killing Duan Tian. A 5th level void initiation stage martial artist shouted out with a grim voice before taking a stride forward and charging towards Dong Ming. The other 2 5th level void initiation stage martial artists were enveloped by origin energy that was like flames, and they flew over like shadows, their target pointing straight at Dong Ming. When faced with 3 5th level voids initiation stage martial artists attacking him at the same time, Dong Ming's face went pale. Kill Duan Tian. The other 3 4th level void initiation stage martial artists made a move at almost the exact same time. But their target wasn't Dong Ming, and it was instead Duan Tian. Origin energy skyrocketed on the grade 6 spirit weapons that were held in the hands of the 3 4th level void initiation stage martial artist, and then their concept suffused out before sweeping towards Duan Tian. 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and over 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared in the sky above 2 of them, whereas 11 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and over 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared in the sky above the last one amongst them. Right at this moment, whoosh, Duan Tian abruptly turned around to look at the 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists that charged towards Dong Ming, and a dim light flickered into existence in the depths of his eyes. 1,000 illusions. In the next moment, he directly utilized his soul skill to construct an illusory space to envelop the 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists. At the same time, a simple and unadorned sword appeared in his hand. This sword was precisely the sword he'd obtained from the skeleton of the white-clothed sword Immortal just now, a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. Along with the origin energy on Duan Tian's body pulsating, another 4 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above him, whereas, when the hand he held the sword with tightened, and his origin energy fused into the sword. Whoosh! Another 4 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky. An entire 100% amplification. How can this be possible? When this scene entered into the eyes of the 3 4th level void initiation stage martial artists, it caused them to be dumbstruck. Even their attacks that blasted towards Duan Tian had stagnated slightly. That sword in Duan Tian's hand amplified strength by 100%. Even if it's a grade 1 spirit sword, it seemed to only provide an amplification of almost 90%, right? A grade 1 spirit sword that was able to amplify strength by 89% was already considered to be top quality amongst grade 1 spirit swords. They'd never heard of a spirit weapon that's able to provide an amplification of 100%. Sword drawing arts. Right at the instant the 3 4th level void initiation stage martial artists were dazed, a cold light flashed in Duan Tian's eyes, and he was precisely waiting for this moment. If he were to fight them head-on, it would be difficult for him to kill all of them at the same time, yet if the 3 of them were careless, it would be a completely different matter. Swish! A sword howl swept out, and it was accompanied by the sound of wind and lightning. In the sky above Duan Tian, another 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared by the side of the existing 8 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. Second level wind concept was comparable to the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons. First level lightning concept was comparable to the strength of 1 ancient horned dragon. A total of 11 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. His strength completely suppressed 2 of the 4th level void initiation stage martial artists and was only slightly inferior to the last 4th level void initiation stage martial artist. A sword light that was like a bolt of lightning flashed by, and 2 strings of blood shot out. Bang, bang, 2 4th level void initiation stage martial artists had crashed to the ground. Although the last one of them had hastily blocked Duan Tian's sword, yet he'd suffered heavy injuries. Originally, if this person exerted his full strength, his strength surpassed Duan Tian by the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. But because of his carelessness, it had caused him to miss a good opportunity to kill Duan Tian. The 4th level void initiation stage martial artist that was heavily injured struggled to stand up, and he pointed the grade 6 spirit weapon in his hand straight at Duan Tian with an extremely ghastly pale countenance. What is that spirit? But unfortunately, he was bound to be unable to finish speaking. Swish! The quasi-royal grade spirit sword in Duan Tian's hand transformed into a sword light that flashed out like a shadow and easily killed the heavily injured martial artist. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian put back the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in his spatial ring. Brother Ling Tian. Meanwhile, Dong Ming has recovered from his shock as well, and then he looked at Duan Ling Tian. What are the three of them doing? Dong Ming, who'd just asked this question, suddenly smelled blood, and he turned to notice the three corpses that fell before Duan Ling Tian. These three corpses fell in a pool of blood, and when this entered Dong Ming's eyes, it was so dazzling and resplendent. After a long time, Dong Ming recovered from his shock, and he stared blankly at Duan Ling Tian. Brother Ling Tian, you did this. What do you think? Duan Ling Tian shrugged, and a brilliant smile hung on his face from the beginning until the end. But when the smile Duan Ling Tian revealed now entered into Dong Ming's eyes, it was no different than the smile of a devil. Duan Ling Tian turned around to look with a calm expression at the three people that had fallen into his soul skill's illusory space and were fighting each other, and it was as if all this was unrelated to him. The three 5th level Void Initiation stage martial artists had equal strengths, and they fought chaotically with each other. The spirit weapons in their hands flashed out fiercely to smash towards their companions that were still standing on the same side as them just a moment ago. The battle was exceedingly tragic. When Dong Ming turned around as well, he looked at the three 5th level Void Initiation stage martial artists that were in a chaotic battle and had received heavy injuries. Brother Ling Tian, what are the three of them doing? I don't know. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and said indifferently, perhaps the spoils couldn't be divided fairly, causing them to start a dogfight. Dong Ming naturally didn't believe Duan Ling Tian's words. Spoils couldn't be divided fairly. What a joke. Earlier, these three people were approaching menacingly, and they'd used all their ability to attack him with a killing blow. He originally thought that he would die at the hands of these three people. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, the three of them had actually stopped attacking at the same time, and they'd instead started fighting each other. This caused Dong Ming, who was originally accumulating force while waiting for the battle, to look at the three of them fighting with a stunned expression, and the origin energy he'd accumulated had completely dispersed. He, who was a common target, had become a spectator. Three people that called each other brother a moment ago and wanted to jointly kill him had instead started to fight each other, and this caused him to be speechless. But he just didn't know what had happened. Suddenly, Dong Ming unintentionally glanced at Duan Ling Tian, and when he saw the cold smile that curled up on the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth, his heart jerked for no reason. Could it be that brother Ling Tian did it? After this thought emerged in Dong Ming's mind, it was impossible to vanish any longer, and it seemed as if it had become rooted in his mind. Although he didn't know how Duan Ling Tian did it, he had a strong feeling that all this was done by Duan Ling Tian. For the first time, traces of terror arose in his heart for no reason as he looked at the violet-clothed young man before him. He knew that this was an existence that couldn't be offended. An existence that could only be made a friend, but not an enemy. If he were to make Duan Ling Tian his enemy, he would surely die a graveless death. 624 Chapter 625, Han Shui Nai's Methods. After a short moment, all three of the 5th level Void Initiation stage martial artists that had fallen into the illusory space created by Duan Ling Tian's soul skill, 1,000 illusions, and suffered heavy injuries from fighting each other. The three of them were barely able to stand still as they gasped for breath and confronted each other in a three-way confrontation. Bang! Right at this moment, an enormous band sounded out, and it drew the attention of Duan Ling Tian and Dong Ming. As for the three 5th level Void Initiation stage martial artists, they instead seemed to have not heard it. Duan Ling Tian glanced over, and he saw the faraway cavern wall abruptly collapse, and a stone door appeared in its place. Along with the stone door rising, a beautiful figure walked out to appear before his eyes. Shui Nai. Duan Ling Tian's gaze lit up when he saw the yellow-clothed young girl that walked out slowly. The young girl was precisely Han Shui Nai. Big brother Ling Tian. The young girl had a long face, yet when she saw Duan Ling Tian, she squeezed out a trace of a smile on her face. What's wrong? Duan Ling Tian asked with slight worry when he saw something was wrong with Shui Nai. Big brother Ling Tian, I'm so useless. Amongst the 6 tests of the Sword Monarch's treasure's 3rd level, I actually failed 2 of them. Shui Nai put on a long face as she spoke dejectedly. Which 2 tests did you fail? Duan Ling Tian asked curiously. I failed the first test to choose a grade 1 spirit sword, and then the final test of challenging a mirror puppet. I was only able to fight it to a tie and it ended in failure. As Han Shui Nai finished speaking, she had an expression of being not resigned. That fellow knew all my abilities, and I was utterly helpless against it. Han Shuinai had spoken casually, yet when it entered into Dong Ming's ears, it instead caused Dong Ming to seem as if he was struck by lightning, and he was completely dumbstruck. 1. Grade 1 Spirit Sword. To Dong Ming, obtaining a Grade 5 Spirit Sword already posed a certain level of difficulty. A Grade 1 Spirit Sword always shocked his heart out. Then did you choose a Grade 2 Spirit Sword or Grade 3 Spirit Sword? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. A Grade 2 Spirit Sword. Han Shuinai was dejected. Grade 2 Spirit Sword. Dong Ming was stunned once more. This young girl obtained a Grade 2 Spirit Sword, yet is still so unhappy. Comparisons are really odious. As far as he was concerned, if it was him, then not to mention a Grade 2 Spirit Sword, even if he obtained a Grade 3 Spirit Sword, he would be happy to the point of practically being unable to sleep. A Grade 2 Spirit Sword isn't bad as well. Duan Lingtian smiled. I don't dislike its grade. Han Shuinai shook her head. I just want to pass that test, no matter if it was a Grade 2 Spirit Sword or Grade 3 Spirit Sword, it's still a failure. In my eyes, there's no difference between the both of them. Duan Lingtian's heart shook when he heard Shuinai. Looks like Han Shuinai's background is really unfathomable as she doesn't even take a Grade 2 Spirit Sword seriously. Big brother Lingtian, what are they doing? In next to no time, Han Shuinai recovered, and she became full of vigor. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. They wanted to kill me, and I slightly executed some abilities against them. Big brother Lingtian, you know soul skills. After glancing at the 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists with empty gazes that were battling each other, Han Shuinai gasped with admiration. Duan Lingtian was surprised that Han Shuinai was able to discern what he'd done. What a joke. Shuinai was someone from a great power of the foreign lands after all, and recognizing soul skills wasn't surprising. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Han Shuinai instantly looked at Duan Lingtian with admiration when she heard this. Big brother Lingtian, you're truly formidable. I've never heard a human martial artist being able to execute soul skills before attaining the martial emperor stage. My luck was good, and I just obtained some good fortune. Duan Lingtian smiled. The nearby Dong Ming was instead unable to wrap his head around what was going on. Soul skill, martial emperor. He'd never heard nor seen of the former, whereas, he'd only heard of the latter and knew that it was an existence that was at the peak of Cloud Continent. Brother Lingtian seems to know some soul skill, and this soul skill can only be executed by a human martial artist after becoming a martial emperor. This was the logic that Dong Ming summarized after combing through and ordering the information. This brother Lingtian is truly shocking. As he looked at Duan Lingtian talking cheerfully with the young girl, the corners of Dong Ming's mouth twitched, and as he finished muttering, he didn't know how to describe the shock Duan Lingtian brought him. Big brother Lingtian, why did they want to kill you? Han Shuinai asked. They saw me come out from the 3rd level of the Sword Monarch's treasure and were greedy towards the things I obtained within it, and they wanted to kill me to seize my treasures. In the end, it became like this. As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian shrugged, and he had an expression that seemed as if all this had nothing to do with him. Big brother Lingtian, you're too merciful. They wanted to kill you, yet you let them live for so long. Han Shuinai lightly shook her head. Subsequently, under Duan Lingtian and Dong Ming's shocked gazes, Han Shuinai abruptly raised her hand. Along with Han Shuinai's hand slowly pushing out. Whoosh! A wave of cold wind that was icy cold to the extreme swept out to envelop the 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists that were fighting chaotically together, and it froze them into ice sculptures. 3 lifelike ice sculptures with various forms stood there. Just looking at them as an eyesore. Han Shuinai frowned as she looked at the 3 ice sculptures, and her hand lightly shook. Instantly, 3 fine needles condensed from ice whistled out. Swish, swish, swish. The ice needles respectively collided with one of the 3 ice sculptures, causing them to directly shatter and crumble. The 3 5th level void initiation stage martial artists within were dead without a doubt. After she finished all this, Han Shuinai was like someone that hadn't done anything, and her gaze descended onto the 3 people that had fallen in pools of blood now. Why have these people died as well? I recognize them. Big brother Lingtian, you'd once helped them kind-heartedly earlier by allowing them to seek refuge on the big guy's back. They were killed by me. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the 3 corpses and said, these 3 people and those other 3 people that you just killed had joined forces and wanted to kill me and seize the treasures I obtained in the 3rd level. What? Han Shuinai's face became grim, and she glared angrily at the 3 corpses. These three fellows actually repaid favor with evil. They deserve death. Under her extreme rage, Han Shui-nai attacked out once more, and the aura that was icy cold to the extreme swept out to envelop the three corpses. Instantly, the three corpses transformed into three ice sculptures that lay on the ground. Bang! Han Shui-nai raised her hand and slapped out, and three palm prints whistled out to blast the three ice sculptures into bits of ice. This wasn't the end. Whoosh! Han Shui-nai's sleeve swept out, and a strong wind that was ice cold to the extreme seemed to condense into numerous wind blades in the air, and it seemed like a dense heaven-encompassing net that enveloped those bits of ice. Instantly, the bits of ice transformed into mist that covered the sky before dispersing in the air. Hiss! A wave of gasping sounded out. Dong Ming felt his heart go cold when he saw the young girl's actions, and he couldn't help but gasp. This little girl. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled, and warmth arose in his heart from Han Shui-nai's actions. As the saying goes, boiling with rage for a beauty. This little girl Han Shui-nai instead boiled with rage for her big brother now. You didn't arouse covetous thoughts towards my big brother Ling Tian's things, right? In next to no time, Han Shui-nai's gaze descended onto Dong Ming, and traces of icy cold aura leapt about within her eyes. It was as if so long as Dong Ming's answer was unsatisfactory, she would attack and freeze Dong Ming into a popsicle before destroying it. No, I didn't. Dong Ming's body started shivering for no reason. He'd completely experienced the temper of this little lady, and he felt fear from the bottom of his heart. Now, even if someone bashed him to death, he wouldn't dare offend this little lady. When others kill, they leave a corpse at any rate, and even if it was worse than that, it would be a mangled corpse. But the little lady caused one to turn into ash with a raise of her hand, and causing one to not leave a single trace in this world. Shui-nai, don't scare Dong Ming. When those 6 people wanted to deal with me earlier, he'd even stood up to help me and wanted to fight them to the death. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. The coldness in Han Shui-nai's eyes instantly vanished and was replaced with warmth like that of the summer. So that's how it is. It seems that I've misunderstood you. I never imagined that you'd even helped big brother Ling Tian. Since it's like this, I'll give you a gift of gratitude. As soon as Han Shui-nai finished speaking, a 3-foot-long blade appeared out of thin air with a raise of her hand, and it whistled out to firmly descend before Dong Ming and pierce into the ground. This is... Dong Ming was shocked, and when he recovered from his shock, he looked at Han Shui-nai with a bewildered expression. This is the grade 2 spirit sword I obtained in the 3rd level. Big brother Ling Tian probably won't take a fancy to it any longer, so take it. As Han Shui-nai spoke, she slightly turned to look at Duan Ling Tian, and her gaze contained deep meaning. This caused Duan Ling Tian's heart to be unable to help but jerk. Could it be that this little girl knows something? Grade 2 spirit sword. Dong Ming's body shook when he heard Han Shui-nai, then he looked at the spirit sword in astonishment, and he was extremely excited in his heart. After a short moment, he recovered from his astonishment and looked at Han Shui-nai. You're really giving it to me? What, you don't want it? Han Shui-nai's beautiful brows frowned as she spoke indifferently. If you don't want it, then I'll take it back right now. No, I want it. I want it. Dong Ming was instantly anxious when he heard the young girl, and he directly put it away in his spatial ring, as he was deeply afraid that the young girl would really regret her decision. After he put away the grade 2 spirit sword, Dong Ming heaved a sigh of relief before looking at the young girl and hurriedly expressing his gratitude. Thank you, young Miss Shui-nai. Thank you, young Miss Shui-nai. Why haven't little black, little white, and little gold come out yet? Han Shui-nai looked at the surroundings and frowned, and there was slight worry between her brows. Although Duan Ling Tian didn't say anything, worry could be discerned from his face. Time silently passed by. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. 3 hours later, bang, an enormous bang sounded out, causing Duan Ling Tian, Han Shui-nai, and Dong Ming to seem as if they were jolted awake from a dream. In next to no time, the faraway cavern wall split open, and a thick and heavy stone door that was slowly rising appeared there. Squeak squeak, a familiar cry sounded out, and it caused Duan Ling Tian to seem as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulder. A fluffy and chubby little gold mouse quickly appeared before Duan Ling Tian's eyes. 625 Chapter 626, Everyone has come out. Whoosh! The little gold mouse transformed into a gold bolt of lightning that flashed out to descend onto Duan Ling Tian's shoulder. Little gold, you've finally come out. How was it? How many of the 6 tests did you pass? Duan Lingtian looked at the little gold mouse and smiled as he asked. When he heard Shui Nai speak of her encounter in the third level, Duan Lingtian realized that everyone who entered the third level faced the same tests. Of course, the last test, the mirror puppet, was slightly different. Everyone faced their own mirror puppet. 2. The little gold mouse's head drooped and she spoke slightly dispiritedly. You only passed through 2 tests. Which 2? Duan Lingtian was stunned. The 100 origin Shadao puppets and the earth puppet, I failed in all the rest. The little gold mouse spoke with dejection. But her childish voice instead didn't emphasize her current feelings in the slightest. Looks like my results are still not bad. Han Shui Nai walked to Duan Lingtian's side before stretching out her hand to stroke the little gold mouse's smooth back, and she smiled. She found equilibrium from the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse closed her eyes comfortably, and she enjoyed Shui Nai's touch. She didn't reject Han Shui Nai in the slightest, and it was perhaps because Han Shui Nai had once helped her take revenge. Although Han Shui Nai didn't directly kill them, all the higher-ups of the Eastern Mulberry Empire's Tang clan were sealed within ice by Han Shui Nai, allowing the little gold mouse to have the chance to kill them. The little gold mouse possessed intelligence that wasn't inferior to humans, so she naturally knew that if it wasn't for Han Shui Nai, it would be impossible for her to take revenge. Presently, when he saw Duan Lingtian, Han Shui Nai, and the little gold mouse chatting cheerfully, the nearby Dong Ming was dumbstruck. A mouse, that can speak, it's a void interpretation stage demon beast. Dong Ming felt that the surprise he'd felt in his entire lifetime wasn't as much as his shock today. Exactly what sort of people and demon beasts are by the side of this brother Lingtian? Dong Ming felt his scalp go numb. Big brother Lingtian. The little gold mouse blinked her jade green eyes, and she stared at Duan Lingtian as she asked. How many tests did you pass? Duan Lingtian looked at the little gold mouse yet didn't reply directly, and he instead said via voice transmission, all of them. All of them. Shock instantly emerged within the depths of the little gold mouse's eyes. This scene just happened to be noticed by Han Shui Nai, and she sent a voice transmission into Duan Lingtian's ears. Big brother Lingtian, you're being unfair. You only told little gold, but not me. You little girl, don't you know already? Duan Lingtian replied with a bitter smile. The reason he didn't speak directly and instead chose to send a voice transmission wasn't because he didn't want to tell Shui Nai, but it was instead because he was afraid of shocking the nearby Dong Ming. Duan Lingtian instead didn't know that Dong Ming had already shocked successively by the 3 of them, and even if he was shocked again, he wouldn't feel much. Because he was already numbed. No matter how unbelievable something that appeared on Duan Lingtian is, he wouldn't be surprised. How will I know if you don't tell me? Han Shui Nai's voice transmission contained slight grievance when she heard Duan Lingtian, and she even revealed a delicate and touching expression and eyes that held tears that were about to drop down. Presently, she was simply like another person when compared with her previous self that slaughtered resolutely. Duan Lingtian shook his head and slightly helplessly sent a voice transmission. Alright, I'll tell you. I passed all the tests. When you looked at me like that earlier, didn't you already guess it? I only felt that big brother Lingtian might have passed all the tests, I wasn't completely sure. As Han Shui Nai finished her voice transmission, her delicate and touching expression had vanished, and her tone was filled with astonishment. Big brother Lingtian, how did you pass the first and final test? When faced with the curious Han Shui Nai, Duan Lingtian didn't conceal anything and spoke all what he'd experienced. Of course, he left out the things related to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. The Grade 1 Spirit Sword was actually an incomplete sword that hadn't taken form. Moreover, it was within a pile of scrap around the cavern. After Han Shui Nai heard of Duan Lingtian's experience in the first test, she couldn't help but grumble. That martial monarch is really a cheater. Who would know that a Grade 1 Spirit Sword is an inconspicuous and hideous incomplete sword? Most importantly, it was even concealed in a pile of scraps. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed when he heard Han Shui Nai's grumbling. The first test was a test of skill and perhaps only high-grade weapons craftsmen were able to locate that inconspicuous Grade 1 Spirit Sword. Big brother Lingtian, how did you find that Grade 1 Spirit Sword? Han Shui Nai couldn't help but ask curiously. I'm a weapons craftsman. Duan Lingtian's reply was simply indirect. So big brother Lingtian is a weapons craftsman, no wonder. Han Shui Nai came to a sudden understanding. A weapons craftsman has a unique gaze towards spirit weapons. I heard that many weapons craftsmen are even able to rely on a spirit weapon's outward appearance to discern its grade. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. A weapons craftsman was an art of skill. The more spirit weapons one refined, one's sense and discerning ability towards spirit weapons would naturally be more extraordinary. Then what about the last test? Han Shuinai asked. I was completely helpless against my mirror puppet. In the end, whether I fought it to a tie or because the time was up, I was stopped by the inscription formation. Otherwise, it would sooner or later be able to defeat me. Big brother Lingtian, how did you deal with your mirror puppet? Han Shuinai blinked her beautiful eyes as she looked curiously at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian smiled. Shuinai, I was actually unable to deal with it as well, I just lead it too. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian the specific process of his final test. What, that works too? Han Shuinai's face froze and spoke with slight vexation. Why didn't I think of that? So it turns out that the final test can be so simple. Big brother Lingtian, you're too smart. Han Shuinai looked at Duan Lingtian with an expression of admiration. At this moment, at the same time that Duan Lingtian felt lightheaded, he couldn't help but be slightly ashamed. After all, it wasn't he who had found the method. That was the method within the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, whereas he'd only used another person's method. Big brother Lingtian, in this way, you've obtained the martial monarch's inheritance. Han Shuinai had an extra sense of indescribable excitement as she sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. A martial monarch's inheritance, even she was rather interested in it as well. Duan Lingtian was just about to speak about the martial monarch's inheritance with Han Shuinai when two enormous bangs suddenly sounded out and interrupted him. Bang, bang, the two enormous bangs resounded out, and at a place attainable by Duan Lingtian's gaze, on another side of the faraway cavern wall, another two holes had appeared. Within the hold, two doors slowly rose up. At the same time, swish, swish, a black and a white bolt of lightning flew out from the stone doors, and their destination pointed straight at Duan Lingtian. After a short moment, a black and a white little python appeared on Duan Lingtian's shoulder. Hiss hiss, they excitedly flicked their tongues as they licked Duan Lingtian's face. Big brother Lingtian, looks like Little Black and Little White are still more intimate with you, they looked for you as soon as they came out. Han Shuinai stood nearby and spoke with a slightly sour tone. Hiss hiss, after the two little pythons heard Han Shuinai, they considerately left Duan Lingtian to flash onto Han Shuinai's shoulder and flicked their tongues to console her. Han Shuinai revealed a satisfied smile. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. In terms of age, this little girl is a little over 20 at any rate. But being able to maintain childlike innocence is indeed difficult to come by. Little Black, Little White, how many tests did both of you pass? Duan Lingtian looked at the two little pythons and asked curiously. Squeak squeak. Meanwhile, the little gold mouse looked at the two little pythons with interest, and her jade green eyes obviously contained a perturbed expression. Obviously, she was worried that the results of the two little pythons would surpass her. When she found out that the two little pythons were similar to her and had only passed 2 tests, the little gold mouse was jubilant. Little Black and Little White passed the 100 Origin Shadow Puppet and Earth Puppet tests, but, to Little Gold, Little Black, and Little White, the other 4 tests are indeed slightly difficult. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. It's good that both of you are safe, as for the test, it doesn't matter if you passed or not. Duan Lingtian looked at the two little pythons and consoled them. Duan Lingtian, who'd experienced the 6 tests of the 3rd level, knew deeply that there was a certain level of lethal danger in the 3 tests of strength, and being able to survive was undoubtedly very fortunate. Hiss hiss, after Duan Lingtian's consoling, the originally dispirited little pythons once again became cheerful. Big brother Lingtian, you haven't told me about the martial monarch's inheritance you obtained. Han Shuinai's voice transmission once again sounded out within Duan Lingtian's ears. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to answer Han Shuinai, history repeated itself. An enormous bang sounded out to interrupt Duan Lingtian once more. Bang! The distance cavern wall split open with a bang, causing bits of rocks to fall down, and a door that slowly rose appeared within. Under Duan Lingtian, Han Shuinai, and Dong Ming's concentrated gazes, an azure and aged figure walked out from within the door. Elder Hu, the azure-clothed old man had just come out when Dong Ming had already exclaimed, and his eyes were filled with a burning expression of yearning. The person that had come out now was precisely the expert, that Dongming had invited for the Sword Monarch's treasure, and he'd come to an agreement with the old man that both of them would equally share everything they obtained in the Sword Monarch's treasure. Elder Hu walked out and glanced indifferently at Dongming before soaring into the sky and intending to leave the Sword Monarch's treasure. Elder Hu. Dongming, who was originally anticipating that Elder Hu would equally share his gains with him, went grim, and Dongming hurriedly soared into the sky to stop Elder Hu. If you don't want to die, then FK off right now. Elder Hu glared angrily at Dongming as he spoke with a grim voice. Elder Hu, have you forgotten our agreement? Dongming asked with a low voice. Agreement? What agreement? Elder Hu grunted coldly. Elder Hu, you said that after we enter the Sword Monarch's treasure, then no matter what we obtained, we had to share it equally. Could it be that I'm wrong? Dongming asked once more. 626 Chapter 627, Elder Hu's death. Dongming, are you questioning me? Dongming's face sank slightly when he heard Elder Hu. I didn't mean it in that way. I just want to remind Elder Hu that if it wasn't for me, it would impossible for you to enter the Sword Monarch's treasure. Dongming spoke once more. His words undoubtedly conveyed a single meaning. If it wasn't for me possessing the key to the Sword Monarch's treasure, and if it wasn't for me bringing you over, it would utterly be impossible for you to have a share of the Sword Monarch's treasure. Dongming's words caused Elder Hu's expression to become even more gloomy. For a time, he wanted to flare up. But when his gaze unintentionally flashed past the two people on the ground that were calmly looking at him and Dongming, he couldn't help but suppress his rage. He took a deep breath and didn't directly shed all pretenses with Dongming. I naturally remember that agreement, but I didn't obtain anything in the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure this time, so how do I share the treasures with you equally? Elder Hu's expression returned to calm as he spoke indifferently. Presently, Elder Hu had a shameless appearance. You have your plans and I have a way to deal with it. You didn't obtain anything. Dongming's face became gloomy. Elder Hu's shamelessness had exceeded his expectations. Elder Hu, according to my knowledge, amongst the tests in the third level, the first test's reward is a spirit sword, the best was a grade 1 spirit sword, and the worst was a grade 3 spirit sword. Now, you're telling me you didn't obtain any treasures from the third level. Do you think I would believe you? As Dongming finished speaking, his tone contained slight rage, and he'd completely shed all pretenses. Or perhaps, you think it's easy to deceive me. I don't know what you're talking about. What spirit sword? I don't know anything. Slight shock flashed past the depths of Elder Hu's eyes, and he was obviously surprised that Dongming actually knew what he'd encountered, but his expression still remained unchanged as he continued speaking. If it was someone that didn't know any better, they person might have been deceived by him. But would it be possible for him to deceive Dongming, who'd already found out about the tests of the third level? Elder Hu, I can forego that spirit sword you obtained, but please take out the other treasures that you obtained. Dongming spoke directly. HMPH, I've already told you that I didn't obtain any treasures. If you still dare to continue grumbling endlessly, then I'll surely kill you. Elder Hu spoke with a gloomy expression, and his tone was filled with a threatening intent. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Dongming started laughing loudly, and his laughter was filled with dreariness. I truly never imagined that before absolute benefit, Elder Hu would change just like that. If I knew earlier, then even if I brought a dog into the Sword Monarch's treasure, it would be better than bringing you along. You dare insult me as being lower than a dog. Elder Hu's expression went dark, the origin energy on his body skyrocketed like a ball of exceedingly raging white flames, and it was ready to charge over and swallow up Dongming at any moment. Could it be that you aren't? After shedding all pretenses, Dongming didn't have any scruples. If you think you aren't, then do you dare to remove the ownership of the spatial ring in your hand and allow me to take a look? If there isn't a grade 3 spirit sword or above within it, then I'll surely not pester you again. Dongming, if you still don't move away, you'll surely die a graveless death. Every word Dongming said caused Elder Hu's expression to become slightly unsightly, and in the end, Elder Hu completely flared up. The origin energy on his body became even deeper, and the energy of his concept was faintly noticeable within it. He was prepared to make a move and kill Dongming right away. Dongming, where did you find this old fellow? He's actually so shameless. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian had already soared into the sky to stand by Dongming's side, and he shrugged as he spoke lazily. When he saw Duan Lingtian wanting to stand up for Dongming, Elder Hu's face became grim, and slight fear was contained between his brows. He wasn't afraid of Duan Lingtian, but he was afraid of the young girl by Duan Lingtian's side. Even if he obtained some benefits from the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, and his strength had increased quite a bit, he knew that he was far from being able to be a match for this young girl. The gap between the Void Initiation stage and the Void Interpretation stage was too big, like a chasm that was difficult to surmount. What about me? Duan Lingtian glanced slightly lazily at Elder Hu as he asked indifferently. This matter is a private matter between me and Dong Ming, I hope you don't interfere. Elder Hu took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress the flames of rage in his heart. What if I must interfere? A smile suddenly hung on Duan Lingtian's face. He smiled brightly and brilliantly, yet when this smile entered into the eyes of Elder Hu, it instead caused his face to go ominous. But Elder Hu's expression swiftly returned to normal, and he glared fiercely at Dong Ming before saying via voice transmission, Dong Ming, you win this time. Even if I spare your life today, you won't be so lucky in the future. After he finished speaking, Elder Hu stepped up into the sky and intended to leave. When they saw Elder Hu wanting to leave, Dong Ming and Duan Lingtian stood on the spot and didn't make any movements. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a cold wind that was filled with an icy cold aura blew by, and a beautiful figure had appeared at the exit. This was a yellow-clothed young girl, and as she stood there, the surrounding air seemed to be frozen by the icy cold aura that effused out from her. The young girl's appearance was beautiful, and it was obvious that when she grew up, she would surely be a drop-dead gorgeous beauty. Young Miss Shui Nai. When he saw the young girl appear and blood his way, Elder Hu took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I've already decided to not make it difficult for Dong Ming, yet I wonder what you want to do by blocking my path. What I want to do? The yellow-clothed young girl was precisely Han Shui Nai, and when she heard Elder Hu, a smile that was like the devil's bloomed on her face. I naturally want to kill you. At practically the instant that Han Shui Nai finished speaking, the surrounding air became slightly more icy cold. Elder Hu's face went ghastly pale. Whoosh! Right at this moment, Han Shui Nai made a move. With a raise of her hand, a strong wind that was icy cold to the extreme swept out, and it enveloped Elder Hu from all directions, causing him to have nowhere to escape. No! Elder Hu's face went deathly pale as he cried out sorrowfully, and then the origin energy beneath his feet skyrocketed as he wanted to flee before being frozen into an ice sculpture. But would he be able to flee? Needless to say, the speed of an 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artist was extremely swift. But would it be swifter than the speed of the attack of a Void Interpretation stage expert like Han Shui Nai? The answer was no. Swoosh! The strong wind that was icy cold to the extreme swept out to cover Elder Hu's body, causing him to be unable to flee. In the next moment, Elder Hu's body stiffened and stopped on the spot before transforming into a lifelike ice sculpture. Through the layer of ice, Elder Hu's constricted pupils and panicked expression could be seen, and how terrified and despaired he felt before being transformed into an ice sculpture could be seen from this. The origin energy on Elder Hu who'd been frozen into an ice sculpture was gradually distinguished, and it finally vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, the ice sculpture fell and crashed onto the ground, transforming into pieces that covered the entire ground. An 8th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, dead. Whoosh! Along with Han Shui Nai raising her hand, an ice fragment on the ground flew up to descend into her hand, and there was a spatial ring within it. Through the surface layer of the ice fragment, it could be seen that the spatial ring was extremely simple and of low grade. Whoosh! Here, at the instant that Han Shui Nai spoke, origin energy bloomed in her hand, causing the ice fragment to gradually melt and only leave the spatial ring behind in the end, and then with a raise of her hand, she tossed the spatial ring in her hand to Dong Ming. Dong Ming hurriedly received it and looked gratefully at Han Shui Nai. Thank you, young Miss Shui Nai. Thank you, young Miss Shui Nai. You've helped Big Brother Ling Tian, and he wants to help you as well. So I naturally won't stand idly by. Han Shui Nai nodded lightly. Duan Ling Tian stood nearby and smiled lightly. Shui Nai, we ought to leave as well. Shui Nai replied with a smile before soaring into the sky and leaving the Sword Monarch's treasure with Duan Ling Tian and Dong Ming. Then they passed through the inscription formation that enveloped to entrance to once again return to the depths of the sea. At the entrance to the Sword Monarch's treasure, the enormous creature that lay there finally moved. Big guy. Shui Nai was the first to fly out and descend on the back of the enormous creature. Awu! When it saw Han Shui Nai, the enormous creature cried out in a low voice, and its voice contained slight trembling mixed within. Obviously, it had a lingering fear in its heart. The enormous creature was precisely the three-eyed flame tiger, the empire-guarding demon beast of the Darkstone Empire. Duan Lingtian and Dong Ming followed Shui Nai to return to the back of the three-eyed flame tiger, and being enveloped by the three-eyed flame tiger's origin energy barrier allowed them to not have to worry about withstanding the pressure in the depths of the sea. Big guy, let's go. Along with Han Shui-nai speaking, the three-eyed flame tiger stomped on the ground with its four limbs. Rumble, rumble, comma. At the depths of the sea, the ground quaked and the mountains shook. The three-eyed flame tiger transformed into a swift flowing light that flashed upwards, and everywhere it passed, the seawater split into two streams that spread out to both sides of the three-eyed flame tiger, causing it to seem extremely mighty. Not long after, Duan Lingtian and the others rode the three-eyed flame tiger to leave the boundlessly vast ocean to return to the surface. All along the way, although they'd encountered many fierce beasts, yet they were directly slaughtered by the three-eyed flame tiger. As for demon beasts, when faced with such a terrifying existence as the three-eyed flame tiger, they'd long ago been terrified to the point of hiding away. This area of sea was not far away from Cloud Continent, and the demon beasts that lurked here had ordinary strengths. If the three-eyed flame tiger wanted to, it was completely capable of dominating this entire area of sea with its formidable strength. Big guy, let's return to the Darkstone Empire first, said Duan Lingtian to the three-eyed flame tiger. He intended to first send Dong Ming back before returning to the Darken Dynasty's capital. Unknowingly, another few months have passed, and the dynasty martial competition is getting closer and closer. As he looked at the direction of the Darken Dynasty, Duan Lingtian's gaze flickered and he muttered in his heart. After notifying Shui Nai and Dong Ming, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on the back of the three-eyed flame tiger and started cultivating 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Earth Dragon Form. At the same time, a milky white stone appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand, and it was exactly the low-grade origin stone he'd obtained in the Sword Monarch's treasure. Presently, Duan Lingtian held the low-grade origin stone and absorbed the condensed origin energy of heaven and earth within the origin stone to cultivate, and his cultivation advanced at a tremendous pace that couldn't be compared to his previous speed. As he felt the boundless origin energy within his body, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into an indistinct light smile. Low-grade origin stones were consumed one after the other by Duan Lingtian, whereas, Duan Lingtian's cultivation was advancing at an extremely terrifying speed as well. 627 Chapter 628, 4th level of the Void Initiation Stage. Because when they were heading to the location of the Sword Monarch's treasure, the three-eyed flame tiger was following behind the jade sword that had a speed that couldn't be considered to be fast, it had intentionally slowed down its speed greatly. This time, it didn't have to follow behind the jade sword, so the three-eyed flame tiger merely spent half a month of time to send Duan Lingtian's group of 3 to the Darkstone Empire. Whoosh! The three-eyed flame tiger dashed into the sky as if it had transformed into an enormous ball of flaming clouds, and it swept straight through, leaving behind a crimson mist in the sky that was dazzling and beautiful. On the back of the three-eyed flame tiger that was vast like a football field, the yellow-clothed young girl stood at the back of its head with 2 little pythons coiled on her wrist. The 2 little pythons didn't make any movement, and they were possibly sleeping or cultivating. Nearby, a robust middle-aged man sat cross-legged as he cultivated silently. There was also a violet-clothed young man that sat cross-legged in the distance, and he didn't move in the slightest, as if he was a sculpture without the slightest trace of life. The little gold mouse that lay on the violet-clothed young man's shoulder awoke suddenly before slowly standing up and stretching lazily. After she noticed the violet-clothed young man was still cultivating, the little gold mouse's jade-green eyes flickered for a moment before transforming into a gold light that flashed out directly towards the faraway yellow-clothed young girl. After a short moment, she arrived on the shoulder of the young girl. Big Sister Shui Nai, Big Sister Shui Nai. The little gold mouse stood on the young girl's shoulder and lightly rubbed the young girl's neck that was white like jade, and she seemed to be extremely intimate. Little gold, you've awoken. Han Shui Nai smiled slightly before stretching out her hand to stroke the little gold mouse. We've already returned to the Darkstone Empire, I wonder when Big Brother Lingtian will awaken. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse looked at the violet-clothed young man in the distance that cultivated with his eyes closed when she heard this, and her eyes flickered with slight anticipation. Time silently passed by. Not long after, the robust middle-aged man that sat nearby awoke, and a wave of excitement suffused his face when he looked down at the boundless ground beneath his feet. Darkstone Empire. I've finally returned. As a person from around this area of the Darkstone Empire, he was extremely familiar with this area. Brother Lingtian hasn't awoken yet. The robust middle-aged man was Dong Ming, and he glanced at the violet-clothed young man in the distance before looking at the yellow-clothed young girl that stood at the back of the three-eyed flame tiger's head. Young Miss Shui Nai, my home is nearby, so I won't continue disturbing you and Brother Ling Tian. Please pass my farewells to Brother Ling Tian when he wakes up. Dong Ming intended to leave. Okay. Han Shui Nai glanced at the distant Duan Ling Tian that hadn't awoken from his cultivation, and she lightly nodded. I'll tell Big Brother Ling Tian once he wakes up. Then I'll trouble young Miss Shui Nai with that. Dong Ming respectfully nodded to Han Shui Nai before glancing at Duan Ling Tian and leaving. He'd always felt grateful in his heart towards Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian had been helping him from the beginning, whereas, at the end, he'd even obtained extremely great good fortune because of Duan Ling Tian. A grade 2 spirit sword, everything Elder Hu obtained in the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, and all of Elder Hu's wealth had now come into his possession. If it was in the past, this was something that was difficult to imagine, it was something that he didn't dare imagine. Now all this had become reality, and all of this was because of this violet-clothed young man. No matter if he was able to meet this mysterious violet-clothed young man again in the future, he would surely remember this favor in his heart for his entire lifetime. If he had the chance to repay the violet-clothed young man, he would surely not hesitate to lay down his life. A few days later, the three-eyed flame tiger arrived at the border between the Darkstone Empire and Darken Dynasty. Suddenly, a ball of dazzling white flames suddenly rose explosively on the body of the violet-clothed young man that sat cross-legged on the back of the three-eyed flame tiger, and the white-colored flames rose ceaselessly. Whoosh! In next to no time, the white-colored flames had risen to the limit, and at the side of the 4 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that had appeared above him, another 2 ancient horned dragon silhouettes had appeared. I've broken through. Duan Ling Tian's figure shook, and his feelings surged extremely as he opened his eyes abruptly and a flowing light that was dazzling like an array of stars flowed within his eyes. At this moment, if someone looked at Duan Ling Tian's eyes, they would have noticed that besides a strand of a flowing light flickering in the depths of Duan Ling Tian's eyes, there was also another 2 strands of dim lights that were faintly visible. Of course, the dim lights didn't exist for a long time, and they were completely extinguished not long after. A brief flash and nothing more than that. Crack crack, suddenly, Duan Ling Tian fiercely clenched his fists tightly, causing a wave of the sounds of bones rubbing together to abruptly sound out, and it was clear and pleasing to the ear. My strength has become much stronger. As he felt the strength that was contained within his body, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but take a deep breath, and his face was covered in delight. After he broke through to the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage, his strength had increased by the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons in one go. Such an increase could be considered as the first time Duan Ling Tian had obtained such a great increase in his entire lifetime, and it had set a new record. Big Brother Ling Tian. Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian heard a childish voice sound out. Swish! A gold light moved right at him to instantly pounce onto Duan Ling Tian's shoulder to reveal a fluffy and chubby figure. It was precisely the little gold mouse. Little gold. Duan Ling Tian stretched out his hand to hold the little gold mouse in his hand, and he lightly smiled. Did you break through during this period of time? Big Brother Ling Tian, I've broken through. The little gold mouse perked up her head and spoke with slight complacency, and her childish voice combined with this tone caused it so seem slightly peculiar. Congratulations, Big Brother Ling Tian. Meanwhile, a voice that was moving like the voice of an oriole sounded out. After a short moment, a beautiful figure appeared before Duan Ling Tian's eyes, and she's obviously discerned something from Duan Ling Tian, causing her to congratulate him. Shui Nai. The smile on Duan Ling Tian's face grew wider as he looked at the young girl before him. Big Brother Ling Tian, you haven't told me what was the Sword Monarch's inheritance that you obtained, Han Shui Nai said to Duan Ling Tian. Her pair of big eyes were now flickering with traces of a sheen of curiosity. Earlier, Duan Ling Tian was busy cultivating, so although she was curious, she didn't disturb Duan Ling Tian and refrained from asking. Now, when she saw Duan Ling Tian had smoothly broken through, her curiosity arose again instantly. When he heard Han Shui Nai, Duan Ling Tian was stunned before being unable to refrain from shaking his head and smiling. He never expected that this little girl, Shui Nai, would be so persistent. But to him, those things weren't anything that needed to be concealed in front of Shui Nai. Not to mention that Shui Nai had always been helping him. With Shui Nai's mysterious and formidable background, Shui Nai might not even be interested in the martial monarch's inheritance he'd obtained, and at most, she was just curious. Shui Nai, at that time, subsequently, Duan Lingtian carefully spoke of what happened after he passed all the tests in the third level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, and he didn't conceal anything, including the 3 profundity fragments. Shui Nai, if you're interested in any of the 3 profundity fragments, I can give it to you, said Duan Lingtian to Han Shui Nai. Although the profundity fragment was exceedingly precious, it was far inferior to the feelings between him and Han Shui Nai in his heart. If Han Shui Nai needed it, then even if he gave away all 3 profundity fragments, he wouldn't frown in the slightest. As the saying goes, when one received drops of favors from another, one ought to repay it with a fountain. During the trip to the Sword Monarch's treasure this time, if it wasn't for Han Shui Nai helping him all along the way, then it was extremely unlikely that he would be able to obtain one of the 10 positions to head to the 3rd level with his cultivation. Duan Lingtian knew his own strength with regards to this. It could be said that everything he obtained in the Sword Monarch's treasure was given to him by Han Shui Nai. If it wasn't for Han Shui Nai, he'd probably have nothing. Big brother Lingtian, you should keep it for yourself, you'll need the Wind Profundity Fragment and Lightning Profundity Fragment in the future. As for the Sword Profundity Fragment, perhaps it will be of use in the future as well. Han Shui Nai shook her head and refused Duan Lingtian's good intentions. When faced with the temptation of profundity fragments, Han Shui Nai's brows didn't even twitch. This caused Duan Lingtian to be even more shocked in his heart and even more curious about this little girl's background. Exactly what background does Shui Nai possess? Even if it was the rebirth martial emperor of all those years ago, even though it was to the extent of being too excitement, but he would probably be unable to maintain such composure before a profundity fragment. Of course, since Han Shui Nai didn't want it, Duan Lingtian didn't insist. It was just like Han Shui Nai had said, the Wind Profundity Fragment and Lightning Profundity Fragment were both profundity fragments that he would need in the future. As for the Sword Profundity Fragment, Duan Lingtian already had a plan in his heart. He would try his best to start comprehending sword force and even sword concept when he cultivated the 9 Tribulations sword control technique. I just happen to have a sword concept fragment in my possession. So long as I comprehend sword concept, I can comprehend that sword concept fragment and increase the might of my sword concept. Duan Lingtian still remembered that the sword concept fragment in his possession was precisely obtained at the end of the 1st level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, and it was something he was only able to obtain after relying on Han Shui Nai's ability. Big brother Lingtian, we've already entered the territory of the Darkened Dynasty now. I plan to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition with you, what do you think? Han Shui Nai blinked her pair of cheeky eyes as she looked at Duan Lingtian and asked. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched when he heard Han Shui Nai. This little girl Shui Nia wants to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition. Wasn't this clearly bullying others? Duan Lingtian could imagine that if this little girl Shui Nai really participated in the Dynasty Martial competition, there would probably be no one that was a match for her. An existence at the void interpretation stage that was even stronger than the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire, King Yong, would be able to easily sweep through all the young geniuses in the entire Darkened Dynasty. It's alright as long as you're interested. Duan Lingtian said, presumably, so long as you mention this thought to King Yong, he'd surely impatiently make someone give their position to you. This was something that Duan Lingtian could be sure of. With Shui Nai's strength, so long as a monster that was rarely seen in the world like Shui Nai didn't appear, then with Shui Nai representing the Darkstone Dynasty to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition, the first rank in the martial competition was in the bag. That's exactly what I was thinking. Once we return to the capital of the Darkstone Empire, I'll ask Uncle Red Mole to give me a position. Han Shui Nai grinned. 628 Chapter 629, arriving again at Milky Way City. Uncle Red Mole. Duan Lingtian naturally knew who Han Shui Nai was speaking about, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. In Duan Lingtian's mind, the mole between King Yong's brows that was like condensed blood faintly appeared, and it was extremely dazzling when it entered into his eyes. Only this little girl, Shui Nai, would dare call King Yong as Uncle Red Mole. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. After the 3-eyed flame tiger entered the territory of the Darkened Dynasty, it went all the way towards the capital. The Darkened Dynasty's martial competition would be held in the capital at the appointed time, and Duan Lingtian would be representing the Darkstone Empire to compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. The Dynasty Martial competition was only an appetizer. The martial competition of the 10 dynasties was the true main event. At that time, the young geniuses from the 10 dynasties including the Darken dynasty would be gathered together to compete in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and seize the highest honor. What I need to do now is to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties in the dynasty martial competition. After that, I have to become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, and use those powers of the foreign lands as my stepping stone to officially enter into the foreign lands. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's eyes emitted a dazzling sheen. He knew clearly in his heart that it wasn't easy for him to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. At least, to the current him, it posed a certain degree of difficulty. Even if I have origin stones and my cultivation is advancing extremely swiftly, but it's practically impossible to become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties with such a cultivation. It's even to the extent that even if it's in the dynasty martial competition, I might not be able to obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Duan Lingtian's thoughts spun, causing him to feel a certain level of pressure. Cultivate. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Earth Dragon Form. Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged and withdrew a mid-grade origin stone before holding it as he cultivated. At the same time, vast origin energy gushed out within his body to flow through the meridians in his entire body before ceaselessly surging into his dantian and strengthening the origin energy he possessed. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lingtian felt that his origin energy had become saturated once more. Of course, he was still quite a distance away from the 5th level of the Void Initiation stage. After he finished consuming a mid-grade origin stone, Duan Lingtian withdrew another mid-grade origin stone to cultivate. At the same time that he cultivated, a fragment appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand. This fragment was precisely the wind concept fragment he'd obtained in the 2nd level of the Sword Monarch's treasure, and it was a 5th level wind concept fragment. Cultivation of origin energy and comprehension of concept was done at the same time, whereas, Duan Lingtian's strength and concept silently increased at a tremendous speed. He hadn't even entered the foreign lands, yet he possessed such cultivation conditions, and if news of this were to spread out, it would probably cause even the experts that stood at the peak of the Darken dynasty to feel envious. No matter if it was the mid-grade origin stone or the concept fragments, it was something that was difficult for them to reach. In the Darken dynasty, there was at most only some low-grade origin stones. These low-grade origin stones had mainly come from the origin stone veins in the various dynasties. An origin stone vein was the foundation a dynasty based itself on. Of course, the origin stone veins in the various dynasties were the lowest grade origin stone vein that was at most able to produce low-grade origin stones, and it was impossible to mine mid-grade origin stones and high-grade origin stones. But even then, it was already shocking. When I enter the foreign lands, then so long as it's a reputable power with some hidden reserves and resources, practically all of them had an origin stone vein that belonged to themselves, and origin stone veins was the basis that a power established itself on. Only those weak powers that were even inferior to the various dynasties would not possess a fixed origin stone vein to mine from. Through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian knew the situation in the foreign lands like the palm of his hand. The stronger a power of the foreign lands was, the more and higher grade the origin stone vein it controlled would be. For example, practically all the origin stone veins controlled by the top few powers of the foreign lands were high-grade origin stone veins, and top-grade origin stones would occasionally appear in them. A single top-grade origin stone was comparable to 100 mid-grade origin stones, and the preciousness of a top-grade origin stone was obvious. A few more days passed. Duan Lingtian awoke and looked down at the vast lands beneath the three-eyed flame tiger and muttered. We've already passed the southern desert of the Darken dynasty, Milky Way City is just ahead. Shui Nai. Duan Lingtian looked at Han Shui Nai and said, I want to make a trip to Milky Way City before returning to the capital. Duan Lingtian had once come to Milky Way City, and he'd even stayed for 3 months during that time. During those 3 months, besides offering up a reward for the ageless route at the Milky Way City's treasure-gathering pavilions, he'd walked all around Milky Way City for some time, and before he left, he'd even made a deal with the treasure-gathering pavilion's master. That deal was something that Duan Lingtian still couldn't help but feel slightly excited when he thought about it. That was a deal that he earned firmly without the slightest loss. Relying on a grade 4 spirit sword to exchange for 2 spirit fruits and another grade 4 spirit sword. Not only that, the treasure-gathering pavilion's master Shang Ying even promised that he would try his best to help Duan Lingtian find the ageless route. Now, I wonder if that pavilion master Shang had found the ageless root. No matter if he has found it or not, I still have to make a trip. Otherwise, if he really found it yet I didn't go over to take it in time, I would have let it slip by. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The ageless root was related to the rebirth pill. Now, Duan Lingtian had already almost prepared all the medicinal materials required by the rebirth pill. The most important main medicinal catalyst, the blood of a scarlet phoenix, and a secondary medicinal catalyst, the phoenix wing herb, had already been obtained by him. Now, he only lacked another secondary medicinal catalyst, the ageless root. So long as he found the ageless root, he would be able to refine the rebirth pill right away, and then he would be able to rely on the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill to make his cultivation advance by leaps and bounds. With the matchless and overbearing medicinal strength of the rebirth pill, I'll be able to charge into the 7th level of the void initiation stage or above in a short period of time once I consume it. Then in half a year, when the martial competition of the 10 dynasties begins, I would even be able to rely on the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill to break through to the void interpretation stage in one go at that time. Void interpretation stage. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's feelings couldn't help but surge. Okay, Han Shuinai nodded and asked. Big brother Lingtian, where's that Milky Way city? Not far away ahead of us, over there. As Duan Lingtian spoke, the clouds and mist in the distance dispersed, and a black dot that was exactly the Milky Way city had appeared before his eyes. Big guy, go to that city ahead. Meanwhile, Han Shuinai instructed the three-eyed flame tiger. Awu, the three-eyed flame tiger let out a low howl before transforming into a crimson-red stream that flew directly towards the little black dot in the distance, whereas, the little black dot grew larger and larger. In the end, the little black dot transformed into an extremely enormous city that was like an enormous beast laying on the ground, and it caused one to be unable to help refrain feeling shocked. This was the Milky Way city. Big fellow, you don't have to go down with us, said Duan Lingtian to the three-eyed flame tiger before calling out to Han Shuinai and flying down with her to slowly descend towards Milky Way city. As for the little gold mouse and the two little pythons, they were cultivating now. The two little pythons were coiled around Han Shuinai's white wrist and were completely motionless, whereas, the little gold mouse lay on Duan Lingtian's shoulder with her legs facing away, and it looked as if she'd fallen asleep. Duan Lingtian and Han Shuinai flew down to descend outside the Milky Way city's treasure-gathering pavilion, and for a time, they'd attracted the attention of many people. HMPH. Kid from outside the city, you're so impolite, let your grandfather teach you a proper lesson. Suddenly, a sonorous explosive shout sounded out, and then a figure that was swift like a bolt of lightning flashed towards Duan Lingtian and attacked him. In the sky, the energy of the heaven and earth roiled to finally transform in a horned dragon silhouette that dashed out and opened its bloody mouth as it pounced towards Duan Lingtian. Futile effort. Under the gazes of everyone present, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth moved slightly as he slowly spat out two words. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian suddenly raised his hand. Whoosh! His origin energy skyrocketed and coiled in his hand before finally condensed at the tip of his index finger, and it condensed into a tiny strand of origin energy. In the next moment, Tempest Point, the material origin energy point force instantly shot out from the tip of Duan Lingtian's finger, and it was like a bolt of lightning as it flashed by to intercept the man that pounced towards Duan Lingtian. The man's speed was slow like a tortoise before this bolt of lightning. Swish! The origin energy point force flashed by, and it didn't even contain any concept, yet it easily pierced through the man's forehead. A bloody hole appeared on the man's forehead as fresh blood sprayed into the air. Bang! The man's body stopped in mid-air as his eyes became dim and listless, and then his entire body fiercely crashed to the ground. Silent. The surroundings were deathly silent. Six ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The surrounding people had expressions of shock as they looked at the 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that were gradually dissipating above the violet-clothed young man, and their eyes were filled with fear. He didn't utilize force and concept, and he'd only attacked with origin energy yet was able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to form such a scene. He's a 4th-level void initiation stage martial artist. Someone couldn't refrain from exclaiming in shock. Heavens! How old is he? 4th level of the void initiation stage. He's simply a monster. He's too young. That fellow is really unfortunate. What does how they enter the city have to do with him? A mere 7th level void prying stage martial artist dared to try and rob a 4th level void initiation stage martial artist. He really doesn't want to live. That person was utterly courting death. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, and they shook their heads as they looked at the corpse that lay on the ground. A 7th level void prying stage martial artist was gone just like this. Shui Nai, let's go. It was only an instant from the moment he attacked to the death of the man that didn't know his limits, and to Duan Lingtian, it seemed as if it was of no impact to him. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian had a carefree expression, as if his expression would remain unchanged even if Mt. Tai collapsed before him. It was as if the incident that occurred earlier wasn't related to him in the slightest. Okay, Shui Nai nodded before following Duan Lingtian to enter the treasure-gathering pavilion. Guests, do you need anything? The attendant at the entrance to the treasure-gathering pavilion had seen the earlier scene with his own 2 eyes, causing the gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian and Han Shui Nai to be filled with reverence. I've come to look for your pavilion master. Duan Lingtian looked at the attendant and spoke slowly. Guest, may I know your name? When he heard Duan Lingtian came to look for their pavilion master, it caused the attendant to be even more terrified. I'm surnamed Duan, said Duan Lingtian indifferently. 629 Chapter 630, Void Transformation Stage Expert. I'm surnamed Duan. A short phrase from Duan Lingtian had caused the expression of the treasure-gathering pavilion's attendant to be covered in shock. He still remembered the orders of their pavilion master a few months ago. If a person surnamed Duan come looking for me, then you must use the most respectful etiquette to invite him into the treasure-gathering pavilion, and I'll surely heavily punish anyone that's neglectful towards this distinguished guest. Guest, please enter. When he thought up to hear, the attendant broke out in cold sweat before lowering his head and gesturing in a respectful and reverent manner to greet Duan Lingtian and Han Shui Nai into the treasure-gathering pavilion, whereas, the group of people outside the treasure-gathering pavilion were instead completely dumbstruck. Who exactly are they? They actually made the treasure-gathering pavilion's attendant treat them with such respectful and reverent conduct. According to the current situation, their identity is extraordinary. Rubbish. If their identities were simple, then would they be able to make the treasure-gathering pavilion's attendant treat them like that? If it's according to me, it's even possible that they have a deep relationship with the pavilion master of our Milky Way city's treasure-gathering pavilion. If it's really like this, that fellow would really be a fool to have offended an existence like this. The crowd of people that were in discussion unconsciously shot their gazes at the corpse of the man that lay on the ground. As for Duan Lingtian, he didn't pay any attention to the bustling scene behind him. Currently, he and Han Shui Nai had directly entered the treasure-gathering pavilion to go see the pavilion master, Xian Ying, under the lead of the attendant. Brother Lingtian. When he saw Duan Lingtian once again, Xian Ying seemed to be extremely happy. Pavilion Master Xian. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled in reply before introducing Han Shui Nai, who was by his side, and Shang Ying. Young Miss Shui Nai. Shang Ying nodded with a light smile to Han Shui Nai before disregarding her and looked at Duan Lingtian before he sighed. Brother Lingtian, you've probably come this time for the sake of that ageless root, right? I'm truly sorry, up until now, although I've used my entire network of relationships, I've been unable to obtain any news related to that ageless root. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised that Shang Ying knew the reason for his arrival. But when he found out of the outcome, he couldn't help but be slightly disappointed. It's all right, I'll think of another way. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and he squeezed out a trace of a smile on his face with difficulty. Don't worry, Brother Lingtian, I'll try my best to continue searching for the ageless root. Shang Ying pledged sincerely. Then I'll thank Pavilion Master Shang in advance. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he said, since there's no news of the ageless root, then I and Shui Nai will leave first. Pavilion Master Shang, farewell. After he bid his farewells to Shang Ying, Duan Lingtian brought along Han Shui Nai to leave the treasure-gathering pavilion. When they walked out of the entrance, Duan Lingtian noticed the numerous respectful gazes that descended onto him, and it was even to the extent that all along his way, discussions about him had spread everywhere. This young man supposedly had a deep relationship with the pavilion master of our Milky Way city's treasure-gathering pavilion. Even the attendants of the treasure-gathering pavilion were extremely respectful to him. He wouldn't be an illegitimate son of the pavilion master, right? Even though the pavilion master is renowned in our darkened dynasty, he ought to be unable to give life to such an outstanding son. Perhaps all of you don't know, this young man is so young, yet he's already at the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage. It can't be, right? He's a 4th level Void Initiation stage martial artist. Yes, He'd fought for a short moment outside the treasure-gathering pavilion earlier, and merely a single finger strike of his had killed the 7th-level void-prying stage martial artist that attacked him for no reason. Waves of intense discussions clearly entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian paid no attention to this, and he directly soared into the sky to return to the sky above Milky Way City with Han Shuinai before returning to the area in the sky that the three-eyed flame tiger was. But when Duan Lingtian arrived there, he couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the three-eyed flame tiger. Presently, the three-eyed flame tiger stood in the distant sky, and its enormous body was trembling intensely as if it was suffering from some sort of pressure. Not only that, Duan Lingtian, who had a discerning gaze, noticed that slight terror seemed to be mixed within the depths of the three-eyed flame tiger's eyes. That was fear that came from its bones, fear that came from the depths of its soul. Squeak squeak, suddenly the little gold mouse that lay upside down on Duan Lingtian's shoulder cried out in alarm, and its fluffy and chubby body slightly trembled. It was as if she'd sensed something terrifying. Hiss hiss. Meanwhile, the two little pythons that were coiled on Han Shuinai's wrist woke up successively from their cultivation, and they swiftly flickered their tongues as their sharp eyes flickered with a slightly unusual sheen. What's going on? Duan Lingtian's face went slightly grim as he looked around in panic with the intention of finding the reason that such unusual change occurred on these demon beasts. But no matter how he searched and even if his spiritual force spread out, he came back empty-handed in the end. If he didn't see the unusual changes in these demon beasts with his own two eyes, he would perhaps really think that there was no person or demon beast existing in the surroundings. Even my spiritual force is unable to detect anything. It can be seen from this that the person or demon beast's cultivation is at least at the void interpretation stage or above. Duan Lingtian was extremely shocked in his heart, and then he took a deep breath as terror filled his eyes. If the person or demon beast was in existence at the void interpretation stage or above, then what he was afraid of the most was the demon beast or person was an enemy and was stronger than Han Shuinai. Shuinai, you've noticed as well. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed that Han Shuinai's expression had twitched, and her eyes revealed an indescribable flowing light, and he couldn't refrain from asking. Han Shuinai nodded. Shuinai, could it be that this person or demon beast is stronger than you? Han Shuinai's expression that was unsightly to the extreme caused Duan Lingtian's heart to jerk, and he realized that the matter wasn't so simple. That person's strength could even possibly have surpassed Shuinai. The facts proved that Duan Lingtian had guessed correctly. Han Shuinai nodded once more. Who exactly is it? Duan Lingtian quickly noticed that Han Shuinai's gaze was currently looking high in the sky above the three-eyed flame tiger. Instantly, Duan Lingtian looked over as well. High above in the sky above the three-eyed flame tiger, the clouds and mist dispersed along with the wind, and an emaciated figure appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. The emaciated figure stood there like a dry corpse, and it caused one to feel a chill run down one's spine. What a terrifying figure! Duan Lingtian noticed that his spiritual force that stretched out and intended to detect the emaciated figure's cultivation hadn't even approached the surroundings of the figure before being struck to dispersal by a shapeless force. There seemed to be something similar to a field in a large area surrounding the emaciated figure, and it completely withstood Duan Lingtian's spiritual force. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian clearly saw the appearance of the emaciated figure. This was an old lady in azure clothes, her emaciated face carrying a calm expression, her pair of eyes dim and listless, and her mood couldn't be discerned from her appearance. She stood there like an ancient statue. Duan Lingtian gasped. This person is probably not just simply a void interpretation stage martial artist, her strength is even possibly at the void transformation stage. Although Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was unable to approach the azure-clothed old lady. He'd inherited the lifetime world of memories and experience of the rebirth martial emperor at any rate, and he'd sensed traces of an aura that only existences at the void transformation stage or above would possess on the old lady. The aura was faint, yet Duan Lingtian still sensed it. This feeling was very strange, and it came from the lifetime of experience of the rebirth martial emperor. Of course, Duan Lingtian didn't dare fully confirm it. Shuinai, look for an opportunity and leave first. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath before sending a voice transmission to Han Shuinai. Presently, he didn't know why this old lady would appear here, and what she desired, but in preparation for the worst, he still hoped that Han Shuinai could leave first. If this old lady really was in existence at the void transformation stage or above and had hostility towards them, then he and Han Shuinai would die for sure. An expert at the void transformation stage or above was far from something a void interpretation stage martial artist could compare to. Even though Han Shui-nai was strong, but she's still nothing before a void transformation stage expert. As a person that had fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor's 2 lifetimes, Duan Lingtian deeply knew this. But even then, he still hoped that he would be able to strive for a slim chance of survival for Han Shui-nai. Big brother Lingtian, what are you talking about? Meanwhile, Han Shui-nai returned to her senses, and she couldn't help but be stunned when she heard Duan Lingtian. Shui-nai, we don't know her objectives right now, but she's extremely dangerous. So you leave first and find a remote place to hide, I'll see if I can draw her away, said Duan Lingtian. Now Han Shui-nai understood what was going on. Big brother Lingtian, Han Shui-nia smiled bitterly. She doesn't have any hostility towards us, you don't have to be as if you're facing a great enemy. No hostility. Duan Lingtian's strained nerves trembled when he heard Han Shui-nai, and he had a puzzled expression. Shui-nai, what do you mean by this? Big brother Lingtian, she's the Qing-nu that I've mentioned before to you, said Han Shui-nai. Qing-nu, she's Qing-nu. Duan Lingtian's strained nerves instantly eased up, and he had an astonished expression. The name Qing-nu wasn't unfamiliar to him in the slightest. All those years ago, Han Shui-nai had once mentioned this name several times. Qing-nu was the person by Han Shui-nai's side. She could be considered to be the umbrella that followed by Han Shui-nai's side, and her strength was only stronger than Han Shui-nai. Moreover, according to Han Shui-nai, Qing-nu played a huge role in the current achievements of the 2 little pythons. So she's Qing-nu, Duan Lingtian sighed and he laughed bitterly as he looked at Han Shui-nai. Then why did you have that expression earlier? Han Shui-nai's earlier expression was precisely the reason why Duan Lingtian was alarmed and nervous earlier. As she looked at the distant old lady, Qing-nu, Han Shui-nai's head drooped as she spoke dispiritedly. Big brother Lingtian, Qing-nu's arrival means that I can't continue staying at the Darken Dynasty, I have to go home. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. So it was because of this. If you want to continue playing outside, can't you discuss it with her? Duan Lingtian suggested. Unexpectedly, Han Shui-nai shook her head instead and said with slight helplessness, it isn't so simple, big brother Lingtian, since Qing-nu has come, then I ought to leave as well. I hope that when I see big brother Lingtian next, big brother Lingtian has already become famous in the foreign lands. 630 Chapter 631, Slim Chance of Survival. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could feel that Han Shui-nai's tone contained helplessness. But he still nodded seriously and replied to what Han Shui-nai said. Shui-nai, don't worry, when we meet again, you'll surely see a completely new me. Shui-nai nodded, and her depressed expression completely vanished to return to a bright smile. But she quickly sighed again and looked at Duan Lingtian while slightly hesitant to speak. Big brother Lingtian, little black and little white. Meanwhile, how could Duan Lingtian not understand what Han Shui-nai meant by this? His gaze descended onto the 2 little pythons on Han Shui-nai's hand, and he was slightly unwilling. Little Black and Little White had been by his side since they were born, and although they'd left for a few years, their feeling towards him were still extremely deep, whereas, Duan Lingtian had always taken them to be his loved ones. Hiss hiss, the 2 little pythons seemed to have realized something, and they restlessly flicked their tongues as they ceaselessly swung their tails. Swish, swish. In the next moment, a black and a white bolt of lightning flashed out from Han Shui-nai's hand to tear through the sky and coil onto Duan Lingtian's hand. Big brother, I don't want to go. I want to follow by your side. Big brother, I'm not following big sister Shui-nai to leave here, I want to follow you. I miss big sister Kair and Li Fei. The voice transmissions of the 2 little pythons sounded out in Duan Lingtian's ears in a timely manner. At this moment, it caused Duan Lingtian to feel warm in his heart. Originally, the 2 little pythons had left him for many years, and there was a slight shapeless distance between them. At least, it was like this for Duan Lingtian. But now, the actions of the 2 little pythons had instead caused Duan Lingtian to feel warmth, and the trace of distance in his heart vanished without a trace. Big sister Shui-nai, I want to stay by big brother's side. Big sister Shui-nai, I don't want to leave big brother again. Han Shui-nai stood in the distance, and her gaze was extremely complicated when she heard the voice transmission of the 2 little pythons. During these past few years, although she'd been together with the two little pythons from day until night, the hearts of the two little pythons were obviously not with her. This caused her to feel both helpless and bitter in her heart. Big brother Ling Tian. Han Shuinai looked at Duan Ling Tian and sighed. Since Little Black and Little White want to stay by your side, then I won't bring them along this time. Right when Duan Ling Tian wanted to say something. Whoosh! It was as if a gust of wind had blown by. The azure-clothed old lady that was standing in the distance a moment ago had suddenly appeared to stand behind Han Shuinai, and she looked at Duan Ling Tian as she spoke with a hoarse voice. These two little fellows are variant Saint Beast descendants. In terms of natural talent, they aren't the slightest bit inferior to the jade-eyed heavenly mouse on your shoulder. The azure-clothed old lady, Qing Nu, looked at the little gold mouse on Duan Ling Tian's shoulder as she spoke slowly. Variant Saint Beast descendant. Duan Ling Tian looked at Little Black and Little White with an astonished expression. He was extremely clear of Little Black and Little White's origins. They were the children of two fierce beast pythons, so how could they possibly have anything to do with Saint Beasts? Senior, are you mistaken? When he thought up to here, Duan Ling Tian looked at Qing Nu and asked. At the same time, he slowly spoke of the origins of the two little fellows. The offspring of two fierce beast pythons. Qing Nu hadn't said anything yet. Han Shuinai had already exclaimed in shock. Big brother Ling Tian, you said that Little Black and Little White are the children of two ordinary fierce beasts. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded. At that time, it was I who brought the two of them that hadn't hatched back home, and their appearance after they were born had once caused me to be puzzled for a time, because their appearance wasn't similar to their mother, nor was it similar to their father. This isn't difficult to understand. Qing Nu spoke once more, and her voice was still hoarse as before. Instantly, Han Shuinai and Duan Ling Tian's gaze were successfully drawn over by Qing Nu. Qing Nu continued. The so-called variant Saint Beast descendant is different from an ordinary Saint Beast descendant. An ordinary Saint Beast's descendant is like this jade-eyed heavenly mouse, and it's able to inherit the bloodline of the jade-eyed heavenly mouse clan from its mother, whereas, a variant Saint Beast descendant is rarely inherited via bloodline, and it's more of a random chance. Just like these two little fellows. When he heard Qing Nu's words, Duan Ling Tian seemed as if he was lost in thought. These things weren't within the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. If you want to say something, then speak frankly. In the end, Duan Ling Tian returned to his senses and looked at Qing Nu. He was able to perceive that Qing Nu had intentionally said those words, and she was obviously foreshadowing for something. Qing Nu's eyes that were dim and listless abruptly lit up, and then she glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian and said, no matter if it is a variant Saint Beast descendant or an ordinary Saint Beast descendant, their latent potential is extremely enormous. For the sake of their own good, you ought to give them a better future and allow them to be able to become a demon emperor in the shortest time possible. Hiss hiss, as soon as Qing Nu finished speaking, the two little pythons that coiled on Duan Ling Tian's hands started becoming restless, and they ceaselessly flicked their tongue. Obviously, they were unhappy after hearing what Qing Nu said. HMPH, haven't you said so much all for the sake of wanting us to leave with you? I'm not going to leave with you, I want to follow Big Brother Ling Tian. The little gold mouse stood on Duan Ling Tian's shoulder as she bared her fang and brandished her claws. Little fellow, you're really intelligent. Your ability to speak at the void initiation stage has completely broken the convention towards demon beasts. Looks like I've underestimated you. Qing Nu looked at the little gold mouse with an astonished expression, and she was obviously shocked by the little gold mouse suddenly speaking out. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse raised her head complacently and cried out twice when she heard Qing Nu. At the same time, the little gold mouse looked at the two little pythons. Two dummies that don't know how to speak. Are the two of you going to follow Big Brother Ling Tian like before or continue to follow Big Sister Shuinai and this old hag? Old hag. The little gold mouse's words caused the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth to be unable to refrain from twitching. Little Gold called this expert that seemed to be at the void transformation stage or above as an old hag. If it was another existence like this, Duan Ling Tian's heart would be burning with anxiety since long ago. But now, he was instead able to maintain his composure. After all, the existence before him that seemed to be at the void transformation stage or above was someone by Shuinai's side. He believed that Shuinai wouldn't allow her to do anything. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian noticed that Qing Nu wasn't even angry in the slightest bit towards the little gold mouse's disrespectful words, and she had a calm expression that was calm like an ancient well. Perhaps, in the eyes of Qing Nu, the little gold mouse was only a child and children said what they like, so there was no need for her to fuss about it with the little gold mouse. Hiss hiss, the little gold mouse's words didn't infuriate Qing Nu, yet it had infuriated the two little pythons, causing them to glare angrily at her. In next to no time, they clearly stated their stand, they would follow their big brother Ling Tian. Of course, it's fine if you want to forcefully keep them by your side. Qing Nu added. Duan Ling Tian glanced indifferently at Qing Nu. I wonder what the better future you speak of is. Qing Nu didn't hesitate to say directly, let go, allow them to return to the wild. A demon beast can only stimulate all its potential in the most adverse conditions and overcome their former selves. With their natural talent, so long as they experience sufficient tempering, then even transforming into a real saint beast isn't impossible. Transform into a real saint beast. Duan Ling Tian's herd trembled. Although he didn't know what a saint beast that Qing Nu spoke of was, as the memories of the rebirth martial emperor had no records of it, since the jade-eyed heavenly mouse was only a saint beast descendant, the formidability of a saint beast was obvious. A saint beast descendant was a demon emperor when matured to the limit. Then what about saint beasts? It was unimaginable. You have a way to help them? Duan Ling Tian looked at Qing Nu and asked in a low voice. Although he was unwilling to let the three little fellows leave, if the three little fellows were able to obtain a better future, then he would absolutely not demand that the three little fellows stayed by his side. He's taken the three little fellows to be his family, and it was no different than a father's care to his sons. It was all for the sake of their own good. I know of a place that's suitable for them, but the time needed is slightly long. Qing Nu said, at least 7 or 8 years, and it could be over 10 or even 20 years. 7 or 8 years. Over 10 or 20 years. Duan Ling Tian's face had a slightly shocked expression as he never imagined that it would be so long. Qing Nu, Han Shuinai, who'd never spoken since the beginning, had finally spoke, and her expression was extremely unsightly. You want to send little gold, little black, and little white to that place? You're mad. As she finished speaking, Han Shuinai was like a mother wolf that was protecting her pups. They're still small, they're only children. Duan Ling Tian was stunned. After knowing Shuinai for so long, it was still the first time he'd seen Shuinai lose her composure like this. He could guess that the place with adverse conditions that Qing Nu spoke of was an extremely terrifying place. At least, even Han Shuinai, who was a void interpretation stage martial artist, couldn't maintain her composure when speaking about that place. Young miss, Qing Nu sighed. Even though they're young, they possess extraordinary bloodlines that are far from something an ordinary demon beast can compare to. You ought to know that if they're able to come out from that place, they'll surely be able to obtain an exceedingly great benefit that's of profound and lasting effect. Han Shuinai went silent for a moment when she heard this. She naturally knew what Qing Nu said was true. Not to mention anyone elder, just Qing Nu was an existence that had once come out from that place. Presently, Qing Nu's cultivation had long ago surpassed the limit that her natural talent could attain, and it could be said that Qing Nu had precisely been changed by that place. That place was hell to over 90% of the demon beasts that entered it, but to other less than 10%, it was heaven. Heaven and hell, a struggle of life and death, is what gave birth to experts. Shuinai, is that place really so good? Duan Ling Tian looked at Han Shuinai and asked. Big brother Ling Tian. Han Shuinai laughed bitterly. I can only say that the demon beasts that enter that place have a slim chance of survival, whereas, those that survive are existences with extraordinary strength and natural talent that was at the absolute limit. That place is indeed the best touchstone for demon beasts, but the dangers within it can't be underestimated. Han Shuinai finished in a single breath. 631 Chapter 632, Alone. Hiss. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp when he heard Han Shuinai. Even though I hope the little gold, little black, and little white have a better future, but if it requires them to bet their lives to obtain it, I'd rather be selfish and keep them by my side and not allow them to leave. Duan Ling Tian looked at Qing Nu as he spoke, and his voice wasn't loud yet was clear and resounding. One could see Duan Ling Tian's extreme resolution from this. Now Duan Ling Tian was like a father that fully did his duty. If his children wanted to go wander in the outside world, he wouldn't stop them, but if his children were to have a slim chance of surviving their journey, he would surely try his best to keep them from going. In the world, so long as one was a parent, practically all parents would rather have their children live an ordinary life than be willing to allow any harm to come to their children. Only a parent like this was a qualified parent. You've made up your mind. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, a short moment passed before Qingnu asked once more. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded positively, and he didn't give any room for discussion. Could it be that you don't want them to be able to help you even more once they become formidable? With their natural talent, no matter how great dangers test them, at least one or two of them will be able to survive. Even if only one of them survives, the help you would receive from a single one of them is immeasurable. Qingnu looked at Duan Lingtian, and slowly spoke with a tone filled with temptation. Qingnu's words were extremely simple. After the little gold mouse and the two little pythons entered that place, then even if only one of them is able to survive in the end, Duan Lingtian would still benefit. HMPH. Qingnu had only just finished speaking when Duan Lingtian's expression went completely gloomy, and he said angrily, "Little gold, little black, and little white, any of their lives are priceless in my eyes, and nothing can replace them. So, you don't have to talk any more nonsense before me. No matter what, I won't allow them to go risk their lives." Duan Lingtian's tone was resolute and decisive, and without the slightest room for discussion. If this azure-clothed old lady wasn't someone that followed by Shui Nai's side, and if the azure-clothed old lady's strength wasn't stronger than him, he would have directly slapped her on the face. But when Duan Lingtian finished saying all this, he was instead stunned. Because he saw Qingnu smiling. "Little fellows, see. For the sake of your safety, he'd rather lose the assistance that would come from all of you. He chose like this all for the sake of you. Could it be that all of you don't want to be able to help him more in the future?" Qingnu looked at the little gold mouse and two little pythons, and her tone had no lack of encouragement. "It's not that I look down on all of you, but with his fortuitous encounters, if all of you continue staying by his side, then all of you will sooner or later be thrown far off behind by him. At that time, all of you will become a burden for him and will be protected by him. Could it be that this is what all of you want to see in the future?" Qingnu continued adding fuel to the fire. Hiss hiss, the two little pythons that were coiled on Duan Lingtian's hand instantly became agitated, and they hurriedly swayed their small heads. Squeak, after the little gold mouse cried out sharply, she spoke with her childish voice. "Old hag, I don't want to let Big Brother Lingtian protect me, I want to protect Big Brother Lingtian. Do you have the strength?" Qingnu laughed in ridicule, and then said in disdain, "Little fellow, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but you're already not a match for him." The little gold mouse, who was originally extremely agitated, drooped her head and became dispirited when she heard this. "Enough!" Duan Lingtian and Han Shuinai shouted out angrily at almost the exact same time. Han Shuinai had an ominous expression as she spoke first. "Qingnu, I know that you have great hopes for them, but that place is truly too dangerous. I don't agree in letting them go there." Qingnu sighed and didn't say anything further. The reason she persisted wasn't because she had any ill intentions, but she didn't want these three little fellows that possessed potential to be buried in dust like this. As a demon that had experienced life and death there and lived to return, she could be sure that with the potential of the three little fellows, if they were able to survive that place, their cultivations would surely soar into the sky. But since her young miss had spoken, it was naturally not good for her to persist. "Big brother, I want to go to that place with her." Qingnu had quieted down, yet the little gold mouse was discontent, and she spoke to Duan Lingtian with her childish voice. Her tone was firm and resolute. "Little gold, don't be silly." Duan Lingtian glared angrily at the little gold mouse. "Big brother, I'm serious. I've discussed with little black and little white, all of us want to go to that place. Once we come out from that place, we'll come look for Big Brother. At that time, we'll be able to help Big Brother more." Little Gold continued with her childish voice. "Discussed with Little Black and Little White. Didn't they not get along?" For a time, Duan Lingtian felt slightly depressed. These three little fellows joining together was truly a cause for headache. "There's no need." Duan Lingtian shook his head and was unwilling to allow the three little fellows to risk their lives. But the stubbornness of the three little fellows had completely exceeded his imagination, and they were unwilling to stay no matter what. In the end, Duan Lingtian was completely helpless. At the same time, he was filled with displeasure towards Qingnu. If it wasn't for this old fellow's constant instigation, these three little fellows wouldn't have changed their minds. Duan Lingtian gnashed his teeth in hatred towards Qingnu. "If anything happens to the three little fellows in the future, then even if she's someone that follows by Shui Nai's side, I will still kill her. At that time, don't blame me for not knowing how to respect elders." Duan Lingtian was enraged in his heart. Duan Lingtian didn't doubt it in the slightest that he would be able to possess a strength that surpassed Qingnu in the future. Not to mention his extraordinary natural talent and the concept fragments and profundity fragments in his possession. Just the great treasure the rebirth martial emperor left in the foreign lands and the rebirth pill was sufficient to allow him to possess a cultivation speed that far surpassed ordinary people. Swoosh! A wave of wind howls sounded out, and the little gold mouse had left Duan Lingtian's shoulder to arrive on Shui Nai's shoulder. Swish! Swish! The two little pythons were unwilling to lag behind, and they returned to Shui Nai's wrist. Big brother Lingtian, don't worry, I'll take good care of little gold, little black, and little white. Now that it had come to this, Han Shui Nai didn't know what to say as well, and she could only continuously console Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded and was slightly dispirited. Big brother Lingtian, we'll be leaving first. Han Shui Nai and the three little fellows bid their farewells to Duan Lingtian. Not only that, Han Shui Nai glanced at the three-eyed flame tiger before she left. Big guy, obediently send big brother Lingtian to the Darkened Dynasty's capital. If I find you that you weren't obedient, I'll surely freeze you into a popsicle again. Ow! When he heard Han Shui Nai's threat, the three-eyed flame tiger's body lightly trembled. But if one were to look carefully, one could notice that in the depths of the three-eyed flame tiger's gaze was a slight sheen of excitement. I can finally be rid of this little devil. The three-eyed flame tiger roared excitedly in his heart and was wild with joy. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian went onto the back of the three-eyed flame tiger and sent off Han Shui Nai and Qingnu with his gaze. The both of them also brought along the three little fellows. Little gold, little black, little white, all of you must be well. When he saw Han Shui Nai vanish before his eyes, Duan Lingtian silently prayed in his heart. Roar! Instantly, the scene before Duan Lingtian's eyes swayed as the three-eyed flame tiger had flashed out while carrying him, and it headed towards the capital. All along the way, the three-eyed flame tiger roared ceaselessly in delight, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be speechless. Looks like this big fellow was really bullied by Shui Nai to the point of having a bellyful of depression. Now, when Shui Nai had left, the depression in the three-eyed flame tiger had finally exploded out. Duan Lingtian shook his head and paid no further attention to the three-eyed flame tiger, and he directly sat down to cultivate. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Earth Dragon Form. Not long after, Duan Lingtian have completely immersed his mind and body into his cultivation, and he seemed to have forgotten the time. He only knew how to cultivate ceaselessly. The origin energy in his body seemed to have transformed into a vast river that ceaselessly flowed through Duan Lingtian's meridians. Duan Lingtian's cultivation was increased at every moment and every second. The three-eyed flame tiger had quickly sent Duan Lingtian back to the Darkened Dynasty's capital, and Duan Lingtian returned to the courtyard that the Darkstone Empire had purchased in the Darkened Dynasty. Duan Lingtian had only just entered the courtyard when he heard someone calling out to him from behind. When he turned around to look, he saw who was calling him with a single glance. Su Li, you went out as well. The person that stopped Duan Lingtian was none other than Su Li. At this moment, Su Li had obviously just returned from somewhere outside. I casually went around. Su Li lightly smiled. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then thought in his heart. I've gone out for a few months this time, I wonder what changes have occurred to Su Li's cultivation. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force silently stretched out to envelop Su Li. At the first possible moment, it had detected Su Li's cultivation. How can this be possible? At practically the instant that his spiritual force detected Su Li's cultivation, Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted abruptly, and his heart was filled with shock. Heaven, what have I seen? Su Li is actually at the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage as well. This was the cause of Duan Lingtian's shock. Su Li's current cultivation was actually exactly similar to him. He knew clearly in his heart about the fortuitous encounters he'd obtained to possess this cultivation. But how did Su Li advance so quickly? Could it be spirit fruits? If it's really spirit fruits, then it's understandable. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. But, it can be seen from this that the master behind Su Li is extremely extraordinary. What a joke! Would someone that's able to use spirit fruits to allow Su Li's cultivation to advance to such an extent be an ordinary person? Duan Lingtian, you left for quite some time, did you have any gains that were out of the ordinary? Su Li asked. I didn't obtain any special gains, I just had some comprehension in the aspect of concept. Duan Lingtian smiled modestly. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian and Su Li walked together before returning to their own courtyards. After he returned to his room, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh as he felt the desolate atmosphere. All of them have left, only I alone remain. Duan Lingtian didn't cultivate at night, and he silently lay on his bed and stared blankly. 632 Chapter 633, Pressure. I wonder how Kair and Little Fei are now, but since they've joined that power of the foreign lands and are highly regarded by the higher-ups of that power, I presume their cultivations have already advanced by leaps and bounds. Perhaps, their strengths now have already far surpassed me. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian had thought about his two fiancées. In the blink of an eye, he'd already not seen his two fiancées for many years, and he rather missed them in his heart. Kair, Little Fei, wait for me, I'll come look for both of you soon. Duan Lingtian resolved in his heart. At the same time, Duan Lingtian seemed as if he'd suddenly been jabbed with a stimulant, and he shuddered as he instantly sat up on the bed before closing his eyes and starting to cultivate while holding a mid-grade origin stone and a wind concept fragment in his hand. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Earth Dragon Form. In Duan Lingtian's body, his vast origin energy surged to fill the meridians all over his body before finally converging together and gushing into his dantian. No matter what, I must become eminent in the dynasty martial competition and obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. I'll only be able to join a formidable power of the foreign lands by becoming eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Only by joining a formidable power of the foreign lands would I be able to have a trump card to protect myself in the foreign lands. With my current strength, if I were to walk out in the foreign lands by myself, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to go far before being killed. Only by walking out in the foreign lands would I be able to go look for Kair and Little Fei, and only then would I be able to withdraw the great treasure that the rebirth martial emperor left behind during his second lifetime. Duan Lingtian's thoughts spun as he drew a flawless blueprint for his future, and all of this was the motivation that urged him to ceaselessly move forward. After he returned from the Sword Monarch's treasure, Duan Lingtian stayed in his courtyard and cultivated. Until 2 months later. On the bed in his room, the expression of Duan Lingtian, who sat cross-legged on his bed, instantly became strained, and it seemed as if he'd encountered something. At the same time, the origin energy in his body gushed out and seemed like raging waves. Whoosh! The raging waves swept out to charge towards the final bottleneck from the 4th level of the Void Initiation Stage to the 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage. Bang! A light bang sounded out, and Duan Lingtian's origin energy smoothly charged through the bottleneck, allowing his origin energy to undergo a transformation along with this. 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage. Duan Lingtian abruptly opened his eyes, and he had a slightly excited expression. His cultivation had finally smoothly broken through to the 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage. If someone were to find out that Duan Lingtian had broken through to the 4th level of the Void Initiation Stage 3 months ago, yet had broken through to the 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage now, and he'd never consumed a spirit fruit, their jaws would probably be shocked off. Duan Lingtian instead didn't feel surprised. With my natural talent that has transformed to the highest possible limit after the 10,000-year stalactite milk, coupled with the assistance of the origin stones, spending 3 months of time to advance from the 4th level of the Void Initiation Stage to the 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage isn't anything great. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Only another 6 months remain from now until the Dynasty Martial competition begins. If nothing unexpected happens, then I ought to be able to break through to the 6th level of the Void Initiation Stage in 6 months, yet wanting to break through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage is practically impossible. This was something that Duan Lingtian could be sure of. Although his natural talent was strong, and he possessed many origin stones, yet wanting to break through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage in such a short amount of time is practically impossible. The 6th level of the Void Initiation Stage would perhaps be able to crush Mozan and dominate the group of young geniuses from the Darkstone Empire, but the young genius of an empire is nothing in the Darken Dynasty's Dynasty Martial competition. Not to mention, besides the Darkstone Empire, there are young geniuses from another few tens of empires that will come. Even the outstanding young geniuses of the Darken Dynasty would probably possess many existences at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage or above. For a time, Duan Lingtian felt an extremely great pressure press down onto him. It's difficult to become eminent in the Dynasty Martial competition with a cultivation at the 6th level of the Void Initiation Stage. If it's the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage, then I'll probably still have a chance. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as his eyes flickered. Wanting to break through to the 7th level of the Void initiation stage in another half a year is extremely difficult, but it isn't impossible. Duan Lingtian's thoughts spun. There are 2 methods. The first, find the ageless root and refine the rebirth pill. The second, obtain the spirit fruits used by Void initiation stage martial artist, and it can't be a spirit void fruit. Duan Lingtian had consumed the spirit void fruit 1 in the past, and if he were to consume it again, its medicinal effect would be reduced greatly and not be of great help to him. Ageless root, I'm afraid it's difficult to find in a short period of time. I would perhaps have a chance to find spirit fruits that are used by Void initiation stage martial artists. In a short period of time, Duan Lingtian had thought of many things, and the thoughts in his mind became clear. But, wanting to obtain spirit fruits used by Void initiation stage martial artists isn't an easy thing as well. Presently, the Dynasty Martial competition is about to arrive, and even if a spirit fruit used by Void initiation stage martial artists were to appear in the Darkened Dynasty, it would probably have already been cleanly swept away. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be slightly dejected. Moreover, I utterly have no way to search for spirit fruits that are used by Void initiation stage martial artists. I almost forgot him. As he muttered, Duan Lingtian shuddered and seemed to have thought of someone. After he thought of that person, he didn't hesitate to directly leave his courtyard and leave the estate of the Darkstone Empire in the Darkened Dynasty. Not long after, an enormous creature soared into the sky nearby the Darkened Dynasty's capital. Big fellow, I'll be troubling you. Duan Lingtian stood on the 3-eyed flame tiger as he spoke with a light smile. Roar! The 3-eyed flame tiger roared in a low voice, and although he was slightly unhappy, he didn't dare let it show. Who knew of the fellow on his back would complain to that little devil? If the little devil were to find out that he'd give this fellow the cold shoulder, then wouldn't that little devil freeze him into a popsicle? With the 3-eyed flame tiger's speed, it wasn't long before Duan Lingtian arrived at Milky Way City once again. After he entered Milky Way City, Duan Lingtian directly went to the treasure-gathering pavilion. Brother Lingtian, you've come to see me so urgently, is something the matter? As he looked at Duan Lingtian, Shang Ying had a bewildered expression. Pavilion Master Shang. Duan Lingtian went straight to the point and spoke of the reason of his arrival. I came here this time because I want to ask you to gather something for me. I want spirit fruits that are used by Void initiation stage martial artists. Besides the spirit void fruit that Pavilion Master Shang gave me the last time, I want all of the other types of spirit fruits. When he heard Duan Lingtian, Shang Ying was slightly surprised. Brother Lingtian, is someone by your side participating in the Dynasty Martial competition? The Darkened Dynasty's Dynasty Martial competition would be held half a year from now. Presently, practically the entire Darkened Dynasty was discussing this grand occasion. At the same time, many powers all around the Darkened Dynasty had already proclaimed that they were willing to spend extremely high prices to exchange for spirit fruits used by Void initiation stage martial artists. Practically all these powers had young geniuses that were intending to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition of the Darkened Dynasty. The people of every power hoped that the young genius from their power would be able to become eminent in the martial competition and win the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. So, they were willing to pay any price to gather spirit fruits used by Void initiation stage martial artists without restraint. I'm participating myself. Duan Lingtian didn't conceal it and spoke directly. Participating yourself? Shang Ying was stunned. When Duan Lingtian had come to ask for spirit fruits used by Void initiation stage martial artists, he'd reacted at the first possible moment that someone by Duan Lingtian's side wanted to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition, and Duan Lingtian was searching for spirit fruits for that person. But he never imagined that Duan Lingtian himself intended to participate in the martial competition, as Duan Lingtian was truly too young. Moreover, he'd heard over 2 months ago that Duan Lingtian was only a 4th-level Void initiation stage martial artist. With Duan Lingtian's age, being able to possess this cultivation caused his natural talent to already be shocking. But just this bit of cultivation is practically impossible to become eminent in the Dynasty Martial competition and obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. It was precisely because of this that he never imagined that Duan Lingtian himself would want to participate in the martial competition. Yes. When faced with Shang Ying's repeated question, Duan Lingtian didn't become impatient and nodded. Shang Ying returned to his senses and laughed bitterly. Brother Ling Tian, I can only say that I'll try my best. It's mainly because the dynasty martial competition is about to begin, and not only are the various powers of Darken Dynasty gathering spirit fruits used by Void Initiation stage martial artists, even the various empires are paying attention to the news about spirit fruits used by Void Initiation stage martial artists. Presently, so long as a spirit fruit used by Void Initiation stage martial artists appears, it would utterly not be long before it would be directly bought by someone with a high price. As he finished speaking, Shang Ying shook his head and sighed. As the pavilion master of the treasure-gathering pavilion, he knew clearly about how many people had come to the treasure-gathering pavilion to ask about spirit fruits used by Void Initiation stage martial artists lately. So he knew how precious and rare the spirit fruit used by Void Initiation stage martial artists were at this moment. Duan Ling Tian nodded as he wasn't surprised by this. Then I'll request Pavilion Master Shang to be on the lookout for me. If Pavilion Master Shang is able to obtain spirit fruits besides the spirit void fruit that are used by Void Initiation stage martial artists, I can ask my master to lend you a grade 3 spirit sword to study properly. Duan Ling Tian looked at Shang Ying and spoke slowly. As he finished speaking, there was no lack of an intention to tempt, and this temptation was undoubtedly enormous to a grade 4 weapons craftsman like Shang Ying. Brother Ling Tian, is this true? Shang Ying looked at Duan Ling Tian with a serious expression as he asked. At the same time, his breathing had become hurried, and his chest had even started rising and falling continuously like a bellows that was unable to stop for a long time. It's naturally true. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Brother Ling Tian, don't worry, during this period of time, I'll surely try my best to find spirit fruits used by Void Initiation stage martial artists and the ageless route for you. Shang Ying promised sincerely. If Pavilion Master Shang is able to find the ageless route for me, I can represent my master to promise to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon for you. Of course, you have to prepare the materials yourself. Duan Ling Tian continued to add fuel to the fire, whereas, Shang Ying had instead become even more excited. 633 Chapter 634, Feng Clan. Grade 3 spirit weapon. Though was something that Shang Ying even wanted to obtain in his dreams. As a grade 4 weapons craftsman, his biggest dream was to be able to advance a step forward in the Tao of weapons refinement and become a grade 3 weapons craftsman. But even though Shang Ying always had this dream, he had no confidence in being able to realize it. Because he'd seen with his own 2 eyes that many grade 4 weapons craftsmen be unable to touch the threshold of a grade 3 weapons craftsman until the moment of their death. Of course, Shang Ying knew that the reason these weapons craftsmen would be like this was mostly because they'd never come into contact with a grade 3 spirit weapon before. In the Darken Dynasty, it had already been a few thousands of years since a grade 3 weapons craftsman had appeared, whereas, the only grade 3 spirit weapon in the Darken Dynasty was possessed by the Imperial family, and it was the only grade 3 spirit weapon that remained in the Darken Dynasty and was known to all. But this grade 3 spirit weapon had been taken to be a precious treasure by the Darken Dynasty's Imperial family, and no one was able to borrow it from them. Shang Ying had negotiated with the Imperial family on many occasions to take a look at the grade 3 spirit weapon, and without exception, he was refused every single time. It was precisely because of this that the rareness and preciousness of a grade 3 spirit weapon was shown even more obviously. Now, when he heard that he had the chance of obtaining a grade 3 spirit weapon, Shang Ying was entirely unable to sit still. Brother Ling Tian, I'll go instruct my subordinates right away. Under Duan Ling Tian's slightly astonished gaze, Shang Ying transformed into a gust of wind that instantly vanished before Duan Ling Tian's eyes. Not long after, Shang Ying had returned once more. Brother Ling Tian, if I have news about the spirit fruits or ageless root you require, how should I find you? Since you're prepared to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition, I presume you ought to be going to our Darken Dynasty's capital, right? Xian Ying asked. Meanwhile, Shang Ying's tone had become anxious, and it was as if he'd already found the things Duan Ling Tian needed. You can head directly to the capital. I'll normally be at the estate bought by the Darkstone Empire in the capital. That estate is called the Darkstone Estate, said Duan Ling Tian to Shang Ying. All right, Darkstone Estate, I've committed it to memory. Shang Ying nodded. Since it's like that, then I'll be leaving first, Pavilion Master Shang, until next time. I'll be waiting for you good news. After bidding his farewells to Shang Ying, Duan Ling Tian left the treasure-gathering pavilion and left Milky Way City. He didn't go anywhere else, and he instead directly returned to the capital of the Darken Dynasty. Presently, with Pavilion Master Shang helping me, then even if he's temporarily unable to find the ageless root, he ought to have some leads towards obtaining spirit fruits used by void initiation stage martial artists. I only hope that he can find it as soon as possible. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief. So long as he broke through to the 7th level of the void initiation stage before the martial competition begun, he had the confidence to become eminent in the martial competition and obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. After returning to the capital once more, Duan Lingtian wasn't impatient to return. Feng clan, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and a graceful figure appeared in his mind. The figure wore fiery red clothes that fluttered about as if it had transformed into a ball of scorching flames. Tian Wu, Duan Lingtian gradually closed his eyes as slight reminiscence appeared on his face. Feng Tian Wu, at that time, it was the first time he'd left the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and after he arrived at the Darkstone Empire, he'd encountered that woman at the Phoenix Nest City. He still remembered that Tian Wu possessed the fire spirit body, and if she had no way to deal with it before she turned 30, then she would explode from the pent-up energy when she turned 30. Now, since I've come to the capital of the Darken Dynasty, I ought to go to the Feng clan and pay a visit to City Governor Feng and Tian Wu. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and he had a plan. Big brother, do you know how to go to the Feng clan? Duan Lingtian swiftly carried out his plan and stopped a passerby on the street before lightly smiling as he asked politely. I don't know. The passerby impatiently waved his hand before going around Duan Lingtian and leaving with large strides. Duan Lingtian could only look towards the next passerby at the side of the street. Big brother, do you know where the Feng clan is? This time, Duan Lingtian withdrew a gold bill with 1,000 denomination and shook it before the passerby. I know. Of course I know. When he saw the gold bill, his eyes lit up and hurriedly spoke with excitement. Meanwhile, the person that went around Duan Lingtian and walked ahead had heard the words of the passerby behind him. He turned around as he thought. There are still people that are eager to help others in this age. It's truly rare. But when he turned around and saw the violet-clothed young man that asked him something earlier had actually withdrew 1,000 gold bill and passed it into the hands of the other passerby. He was completely dumbstruck. 1,000 gold for replying just one question. For a time, he felt extremely regretful, and he hated himself for being too impatient to actually miss such a rare opportunity. He vowed in his heart that if someone asked him the way in the future, then he would surely not be impatient again, and he would patiently answer the passerby. Duan Lingtian would never know all this, as he'd already found out about the location of the Feng clan estate and had directly walked over now. Not long after, Duan Lingtian stood before the entrance of a vast estate. This vast estate was beautifully decorated and looked to not be the slightest bit inferior to the imperial palace. It could be seen from this that the power this estate represented was extremely extraordinary in the territory of the Darken Dynasty. This Feng clan is really extraordinary. The entrance of a mere estate is comparable to the entrance to the Darkstone Empire's imperial city. As he looked at the door before him, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be slightly surprised. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto an enormous plaque on the door. On it was 2 words written in exquisite writing. Feng clan. That Feng word, suddenly, seeming to have sensed something, Duan Lingtian's burning gaze stared fixedly at the word, Feng, on the plaque. On the word, Duan Lingtian clearly sensed the aura of an inscription formation. When Duan Lingtian's spiritual force fused into it, bang! Instantly, Duan Lingtian felt a shapeless energy assault him. Subsequently, his mind became clear. At the same time, a shocking scene appeared before his eyes. In the scene, an exceedingly enormous flying beast floated above the sky, and its entire body flowed with an extremely beautiful crimson-red glow. On the flying beast's body, boundless flames blazed, and it seemed like a joyful fairy of flames. Phoenix. Although Duan Lingtian had never seen a flying demon beast like this demon beast was slightly similar to the divine beast Phoenix of legend, and it allowed Duan Lingtian to easily connect them together. Most importantly, this scene was in the form of an inscription formation, and it was contained within the Feng word on the plaque on the Feng clan estate's door. It caused one to be unable to refrain from being lost in wild and fanciful thoughts. Duan Lingtian walked out with large strides and headed towards the Feng clan estate's door. In next to no time, the guards at the entrance abruptly stood up and seemed to have transformed into a guardian of the door that stopped Duan Lingtian. These Feng clan guards wore fiery red clothes, and their brows were filled with seriousness, causing them to seem to possess overwhelming imposing aura. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out to envelop these Feng clan guards and detect their cultivations. The strongest amongst these Feng clan guards was at the 9th level of the void prying stage and the weakest was at the 7th level of the void prying stage. This caused Duan Lingtian to be speechless. I truly never imagined that the clan Tianwu belongs to is so terrifying. Martial artists at the 7th level of the void prying stage or above are actually only the guards of her clan. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart. What are you here for? Meanwhile, the one and only 9th level void prying stage martial artist amongst the Feng clan guards stood out to stare at Duan Lingtian as he asked with a low voice. I've come to look for someone. Duan Lingtian shrugged and spoke slowly. Who? The Feng clan guard inquired thoroughly. I'm looking for Feng Tianwu. Duan Lingtian directly spoke of the reason of his arrival. Feng Tianwu. The group of Feng clan guard couldn't help but be stunned. Feng Tianwu, is there such a person in our Feng clan? Instantly, many Feng clan guards looked at each other, and some of them couldn't refrain from muttering. Although their voices were soft, it was heard entirely by Duan Lingtian, and it caused him to feel speechless. It can't be, right? Their people actually don't know Tianwu. In next to no time, the Feng clan guard in the lead said to Duan Lingtian, "Little brother, have you come to the wrong place? Our Feng clan doesn't have a person called Feng Tianwu. There's no person called Feng Tianwu." The words of the Feng clan guard caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from being stunned for a while. Are you sure your Feng clan doesn't have a person called Feng Tianwu? In the end, Duan Lingtian recovered from his shock and asked. Yes. In the end, the answer Duan Lingtian obtained was the same. Then I want to ask you, how many Feng clans are there in the Darken Dynasty's capital? Duan Lingtian asked again. There's only our Feng clan in the Darken Dynasty's capital. The Feng clan guard patiently answered Duan Lingtian. Only one Feng clan. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier, when this Feng clan guard said their Feng clan didn't have a person called Feng Tianwu, he thought that he'd come to the wrong place. He'd even guessed that there might be two Feng clans in the Darken Dynasty's capital, and Feng Tianwu was from that other Feng clan. But the words of the Feng clan guard had caused Duan Lingtian to realize that he didn't come to the wrong place. This place was the Feng clan that he was looking for. But they actually don't know Tianwu. How can this be possible? I want to confirm if the person I'm looking for is really not at your Feng clan. All of you haven't heard of Feng Tianwu, but do all of you know Feng Wudao? Duan Lingtian looked at the Feng clan guard and asked a step further. Feng Wudao. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that when he finished speaking, the expressions of the group of Feng clan guards instantly changed. These Feng clan guards originally had casual expressions, but at the instant that he finished speaking, reverence simultaneously suffused all of their faces. It was reverence that came from the depths of their hearts, and there wasn't the slightest falseness. 634 Chapter 635, Grandma Shu. When he saw the admiration revealed on the faces of the group of Feng clan guards, Duan Lingtian knew that he was at the right place. This place was the Feng clan that Feng Wudao spoke of. But why did these Feng clan members not know Tianwu? This was something that puzzled Duan Lingtian extremely. Meanwhile, the Feng clan guard in the lead was first to return to his senses, and he took a deep breath before looking at Duan Lingtian. Young master, you know the eldest master. Eldest master. Duan Lingtian was stunned, and then he reacted to the meaning of these words. This Feng clan guard was precisely talking about Feng Wudao. Yes, I know him. I came here this time to look for him. Duan Lingtian nodded. When he saw Duan Lingtian confirm it, the Feng clan guard had slight reverence in his eyes when he looked at Duan Lingtian again. I hope young master can forgive me for my previous offense. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly. There's no harm done. I wonder if you can notify him of my arrival. Young master, please follow me. The Feng clan guard didn't go in to announce Duan Lingtian's arrival and instead directly called out to Duan Lingtian before leading the way to bring Duan Lingtian into the Feng clan estate. As for the other Feng clan guards, all of them stood at both sides of the path and looked respectfully at Duan Lingtian's figure that vanished into the distance. The eldest master hasn't appeared in public for many years. I never expected that a young man like this actually knows the eldest master. Yeah, the eldest master is an unreachable legend in our Feng clan. According to rumor, if it wasn't for the eldest master having no intention to become the patriarch of our Feng clan, the current Feng clan's patriarch would surely be the eldest master. I've heard of this as well. Eldest Master's strength has supposedly already arrived at an extraordinary level that is even not inferior to the two ancestors of our Feng clan. All the Feng clan guards whispered in discussion, and their words were filled with reverence towards Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao, the Feng clan's eldest master and the big brother of the current patriarch of the Feng clan. His status in the Feng clan wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the patriarch, and it was almost at the level of the two great ancestors. All along the way, Duan Lingtian found out about all of this from the Feng clan guard that he was following. I never imagined that the city governor Feng from that day has such a background. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart. At the same time, Duan Lingtian curiously asked the Feng clan guard that lead the way before him. Big brother, your Feng clan estate seems to be built extremely grandly and magnificently, and it's not much inferior to the imperial palace. The status of your Feng clan in the Darken dynasty ought to not be low, right? Duan Lingtian's words were actually only a form of probing. Along with Duan Lingtian finishing his words, the Feng clan guard revealed an expression of pride, and at the same time, he looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, "Young master, you aren't someone from our Darken dynasty, right?" "How so?" Duan Lingtian was stunned. "If young master is from the Darken dynasty, it's impossible for you to not understand our Feng clan." The Feng clan guard lightly smiled. Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he faintly realized in his heart that the Feng clan was probably in existence with an extraordinary status in the Darken dynasty. Meanwhile, the Feng clan guard looked respectfully at Duan Lingtian once more and asked, "May I know your name, young master?" "Duan Lingtian." Duan Lingtian stated it frankly. "So it's young master Lingtian. If I'm not wrong, young master Lingtian has most probably arrived at the Darken dynasty for the sake of the dynasty martial competition, right?" As the Feng clan guard finished speaking, he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. "Yes." Duan Lingtian didn't hide the truth, and then he asked with slight surprise, "How did you perceive it?" "Logically speaking, with my age, it's truly difficult to make others connect me with the dynasty martial competition." Indeed, the dynasty martial competition had gathered the most outstanding young geniuses in the Darken dynasty, and the young geniuses that had become eminent in the various empires. Normally speaking, practically all these young geniuses were existences around the age of 35. A young man like Duan Lingtian who looked to be around the age of 25 was rarely seen to be connected to the dynasty martial competition by others. "Young master Lingtian, I was actually guessing as well. Since you know the eldest master, then you naturally can't be looked at with an ordinary light." The Feng clan guard smiled as a matter of course. His words revealed extremely blind adoration towards the Feng clan's eldest master, Feng Wudao. "That works as well." Duan Lingtian was slightly speechless. At the same time, Duan Lingtian deeply realized the status Feng Wudao had in the Feng clan. He wasn't the patriarch, yet had surpassed the patriarch. With city governor Feng's status in the Feng clan, logically speaking, as his daughter, Tian Wu ought to be known well by the Feng clan members, but why did they just not know Tian Wu? Duan Lingtian was extremely puzzled about this. But he didn't directly ask this Feng clan guard. "I'll wait for when I see city governor Feng and Tian Wu to ask them." Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The Feng clan was extremely vast, and it wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the Darkstone Empire's imperial palace. All along the way, they took many twists and turns. On the way, he could see numerous busy servants. Duan Lingtian followed behind the Feng clan guard to head all the way towards the eastern area of the Feng clan estate. In the end, they stood before an extremely spacious estate. This estate was an estate within an estate, and it stood within the Feng clan estate with its doors closed tightly as if it was completely separated from the outside. "Young master Lingtian, this is the estate the eldest master lives in." The Feng clan guard looked at Duan Lingtian and spoke with a respectful voice. Subsequently, he took 2 steps forward and knocked on the estate door. After a short moment, the estate door was slowly opened. An aged figure appeared behind the door. This was an old lady. The old lady had an aged appearance and wore green clothes, and she looked as if she was an old hag. But if one looked carefully, one would be able to notice that deep within the old lady's eyes, there seemed to be 2 strands of bright lights leaping about. This old lady wasn't simple. "Senior Shu." The Feng clan guard bowed respectfully when facing the old lady. "Do you need something?" The old lady didn't even raise her head as she asked indifferently. "Senior." Before the Feng clan guard opened his mouth, Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from speaking first. He knew this old lady. The old lady was none other than Grandma Shu that he'd seen before in the Phoenix Nest City's city governor's estate, and she was also someone that followed by Tian Wu's side. At that day, for the sake of Tian Wu, Grandma Shui didn't even have scruples as she knelt before him, and her loyalty to Tian Wu was obvious. Duan Lingtian always had respect in his heart towards Grandma Shu. Duan Lingtian's voice broke the slightly oppressive atmosphere at the scene, whereas, Grandma Shu had finally slowly raised her head, and with a glance, she saw Duan Lingtian who stood behind the Feng clan guard. Ling, young Master Lingtian. When Grandma Shu saw Duan Lingtian, her muddy eyes flickered with a bright light, and she spoke out with slight pleasant surprise. When the Feng clan guard saw the old lady lose her composure like this and had even called out Duan Lingtian's name, he clearly realized that Duan Lingtian was extraordinary. What a joke, he was extremely clear about who this old lady before him was. Supposedly, this old lady was once the personal servant of the last Feng clan patriarch's wife, and she was an expert with extraordinary strength. At this day, even the Feng clan's patriarch had to be slightly respectful when facing her. The old lady only needed so say a word and she would be able to control the life and death of a Feng clan guard like him. Senior, long time no see. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded to Grandma Shu, and it could be considered to be his greeting. Grandma Shu didn't mind either, and she called out to Duan Lingtian. Young Master Lingtian, please come in. At the same time that he walked into the estate, Duan Lingtian didn't forget to turn around and nod to the Feng clan guard. Thanks for the trouble. Young Master Lingtian, don't mention it. The Feng clan guard hurriedly replied modestly. The Feng clan guard took a deep breath and turned around to leave after the door to the estate before him closed. His heart was filled with shock. Earlier, even Senior Shu was respectful when facing that young man. Senior Shu doesn't even treat those young masters of our Feng clan like that. He wouldn't be the illegitimate son of the eldest master, right? As he continued thinking, the Feng clan guard couldn't help but guess in his heart. Of course, he only dared guess. If he were to dare speak of this guess of his, then even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to save him. Presently, Duan Lingtian had followed Grandma Shu to enter the estate within the Feng clan estate, the estate that belonged to the Feng clan's eldest master, Feng Wudao. Young Master Lingtian, when did you come to the capital? Grandma Shu brought Duan Lingtian to walk in the estate as she asked. I've arrived for some time. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled before asking. Senior, are city governor Feng and Tian Wu here? Grandma Shu shook her head. Eldest master and the young miss went out last month, and they probably will be gone for some time, but they'll rush back before the dynasty martial competition. Gone out, Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly as it looked like he came at the wrong time. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian was invited into the estate's hall by Grandma Shui, and she made a pot of tea for him. In the entire estate, not a single servant could be seen, and it was extremely desolate. Elder Kong isn't here as well. Duan Lingtian looked at the surroundings and asked. Grandma Shu nodded. Elder Kong, eldest master, and the young miss left together. Young Master Lingtian, you probably didn't come to the Darken Dynasty's capital this time just for the sake of visiting eldest master and the young miss, right? Duan Lingtian had said earlier that he'd already arrived at the Darken Dynasty's capital for some time, so she could know from this that Duan Lingtian didn't come solely for the Feng clan. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. I came for the dynasty martial competition. Dynasty martial competition? Grandma Shu was slightly surprised. Could it be that young Master Lingtian is representing the Darkstone Empire? Duan Lingtian nodded. For a time, Grandma Shu's gaze on Duan Lingtian had changed to a gaze of shock. I never imagined that in a few short years, young Master Lingtian's strength has actually advanced so swiftly to even become eminent amongst the numerous young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire and obtain the qualifications to participate in the dynasty martial competition. It was only luck. Duan Lingtian spoke modestly. Luck. Grandma Shu shook her head. She'd lived for more than half a lifetime and would naturally not believe that it was luck. As expected of the destined man of the young miss, he's really extraordinary. Grandma Shu sighed in her heart. 635 Chapter 636, A Life Full of Misfortune. Senior. Duan Lingtian looked at Grandma Shui and asked curiously. When I was at the Feng clan estate's entrance, I asked those few Feng clan guards, they seemed to not know the existence of Tian Wu. This was something that deeply bewildered Duan Lingtian even until now. Feng Tian Wu was the daughter of the Feng clan's eldest master, Feng Wudao. Logically speaking, she ought to be known by all in the Feng clan. But those Feng clan guards seemed to have utterly never heard that the Feng clan had a figure called Feng Tianwu. This isn't strange. Grandma Shu shook her head and said slowly, to a certain extent, the existence of the young miss isn't acknowledged by our Feng clan. In our Feng clan, only the people by the side of the eldest master and young miss, and some Feng clan higher-ups know of the existence of the young miss. Since the beginning, the higher-ups of the Feng clan have intentionally concealed the existence of the young miss to the outside world, so not to mention those guards and servants, even some young direct descendant disciples of the Feng clan don't know of the existence of the young miss. As she finished speaking, Grandma Shui sighed. Why did the Feng clan's higher-ups want to do this? Duan Lingtian frowned. Because of the Feng clan's prestige. Grandma Shu spoke slowly. Prestige? Duan Lingtian was slightly puzzled. Could it be that Tianwu's existence was even able to affect the prestige of the Feng clan? What sort of argument was this? If young Master Lingtian is free, then this old lady will disturb young Master Lingtian for some time and allow young Master Lingtian to understand the reason behind this. Suddenly, Grandma Shu had already sat down at the side. I'm free. Duan Lingtian nodded, and he was filled with curiosity towards the reason behind this. Meanwhile, Grandma Shui slowly spoke. Many years ago, there were two leading great clans beneath the imperial family in the Darken dynasty. The two great clans were our Feng clan and the Long clan. Our Feng clan and the Long clan were like fire and water, and in the end, we'd even completely shed all pretenses and gave rise to a sanguinary slaughter. The two great clans started an unprecedented battle. At that time, the intensity of the battle between the two clans was utterly impossible to be imagined by ordinary people. The higher-ups of both clans had even vowed that they would annihilate the others and completely exterminate the bloodline of the other clan. 30 years ago, our Feng clan killed a few void interpretation stage experts of the Long clan by way of a scheme, and from this moment onwards, our Feng clan crushed them and almost annihilated them. Right at this time, no one had expected that the son of our Feng clan's patriarch, the eldest young master of the Feng clan, had actually saved the third young miss of the Long clan and was deeply in love with her. When the patriarch found out about this, it was already a few years later. At that time, our Feng clan's eldest young master and the Long clan's third young miss had already given birth to a daughter. At that time, the patriarch was angered to death. The Long clan's third young miss blamed herself and chose to commit suicide. At that time, only a single bloodline remained of the Long clan, and that was, when Grandma Shui spoke up to hear, she'd already started lamenting repeatedly. It's Tianwu, right? Duan Lingtian asked. Yes. Grandma Shui nodded. As expected, Duan Lingtian had a complicated gaze. When Grandma Shui told this story, he'd guessed that the eldest young master of the Feng clan in the story was Feng Wudao, and the third young miss of the Long clan was Tianwu's mother. Tianwu possessed the bloodline of the Long clan and the Feng clan. What happened after that? Was it City Governor Feng that was able to protect Tianwu? Duan Lingtian asked. After arriving at this world for a long time, he possessed a certain level of understanding towards the things in this world. A great clan like this Feng clan paid extremely great regard to their prestige. That Feng clan's patriarch was angered to death because he felt his own son had brought shame to the Feng clan, and it was his fault for not educating his son properly. Duan Lingtian could imagine that after the death of Tianwu's mother, all the Feng clan higher-ups would surely sever the last strand of bloodline of the Long clan for the sake of the vow that the Feng clan had once made. No. Grandma Shui shook her head and sighed. At that time, although the eldest young master's strength was at the top amongst those of the same generation, he wasn't the match of that group of old fellows. At that time, it was the Lord Diviner and Elder Kong that interfered and protected the young miss's life. But, since that day, the Feng clan higher-ups came to an agreement. They would not allow others to know all this. Moreover, the young miss was concealed within the Feng clan to follow by the side of the former eldest young master who was the current eldest master and live in seclusion. It's precisely because of this that few people within the Feng clan know of the existence of the young miss. Grandma Shu finished speaking in one go. Duan Lingtian let out a long sigh. I truly never imagined that Tianwu had such a complicated past. Does Tianwu know about all this? No. Grandma Shui shook her head, and her expression gradually became serious. Young Master Lingtian, no matter what, you must not mention it to the young miss, otherwise, I'm afraid it will be difficult for the young miss to accept it. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded seriously. He could imagine that if Feng Tianwu found out about this, she would probably be overwhelmed with grief. Her own grandfather was killed by her own father and mother, whereas, her own mother had committed suicide because of the death of her grandfather. Most importantly, half of the bloodline within her body belongs to the Long clan, whereas, the Long clan was wiped out by the Feng clan. If Tian Wu was allowed to find out the truth about all this, how should she decide? It was difficult for Duan Ling Tian to imagine. So, up until now, the best way to deal with it was to never allow Tian Wu to know of this secret. She's really a girl with a life full of misfortune, her birth is so pitiable, and she even possesses that fire spirit body. At this moment, the pity Duan Ling Tian felt for Feng Tian Wu grew in his heart. Young Master Ling Tian, the young miss will be participating in the Dynasty Martial competition this time as well. At that time, the young miss will officially make an appearance before everyone. When Grandma Shu spoke up to hear, her face revealed a rare smile. The Feng clan's higher-ups are willing to allow Tian Wu to make an appearance in public. Duan Ling Tian asked. It's not up to them now. Grandma Shu spoke slowly, and she revealed strong confidence between her brows. Not up to them. Duan Ling Tian was first stunned, and then he reacted and had guessed the meaning within Grandma Shu's words. Looks like, the current city governor Feng doesn't have to care about that group of Feng clan higher-ups any longer, but, even if Tian Wu makes an appearance in public, her identity ought to be intentionally concealed. This was something that Duan Ling Tian could be sure of. He believed that as the father of Tian Wu, and for the sake of Tian Wu, Feng Wudao would absolutely not allow Tian Wu to know of her origins. He could be sure of one thing, and that from this time onwards, Tian Wu, who was the only daughter of the Feng clan's eldest master, would be known to all and receive both honor and love. Tian Wu. Duan Ling Tian was happy for Tian Wu as well. Tian Wu finally didn't have to conceal herself any longer. I hope this little girl with a life full of misfortunate is able to find a way to deal with her fire soul body. Presently, my true age is soon to arrive at the age of 30. But up until now, there isn't a sign of awakening an innate spirit body. Duan Ling Tian sighed to himself. Although he'd been affirmed as the man that was in Feng Tian Wu's destiny, up until now, he had utterly no way of helping Feng Tian Wu remove the latent threat of her fire spirit body. Perhaps, that prophecy is an utter mistake. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Young Master Ling Tian, why don't you stay here first and wait for the eldest master and the young miss to return? Grandma Shu suggested. There's no need. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. I have a place to stay. Since City Governor Feng and Feng Tian Wu will return before the Dynasty Martial competition, then I'll naturally have the chance to meet them at that time. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian bid his farewells and left. Grandma Shui sent Duan Ling Tian all the way to the entrance of the Feng clan estate, and it caused the group of Feng clan guards at the entrance to be dumbstruck. Only when Grandma Shui left and Duan Ling Tian's figure vanished before their eyes did they recover from their shock. Senior Shui actually personally sent this young master out. Who exactly is he? As someone by the eldest master's side, Senior Shu had already been living in seclusion, and even the group of young masters and young misses in the clan were completely ignored by Senior Shu. This young man is instead able to make her treat him like this. It's truly shocking. Many Feng clan guards whispered in discussion, whereas, the Feng clan guard that brought Duan Ling Tian in earlier instead maintained a calm expression from the beginning until the end. He wasn't surprised by everything that happened earlier. Because he'd long since perceived the respectful attitude the old lady had towards the violet-clothed young man. Although I didn't see City Governor Feng and Tian Wu, but I found out about Tian Wu's origins from my visit to the Feng clan this time, so I can't be considered to have come for nothing. After he left the Feng clan estate, Duan Ling Tian intended to return to the estate the Darkstone Empire bought in the Darken Dynasty's capital. When he passed a restaurant, there just happened to be two middle-aged men that passed by Duan Ling Tian. The conversation between the two men attracted Duan Ling Tian's attention. The Zhang clan is probably going to make a great show this time. The Zhang clan's eldest young master that just returned has already broken through to the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage at such a young age, and it's truly shocking. Supposedly, that Zhang clan's eldest young master has already touched the threshold of the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage. When the Dynasty Martial competition begins, he has the chance of breaking through to the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage. Looks like the Zhang clan will surely be able to obtain a position to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties this time. Zhang clan eldest young master. Surnamed Zhang. For a time, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but recall that big brother Zhang Shouyang, that he'd been with for some time. Big Brother Zhang seems to be a member of the Darken Dynasty's capital's Zhang clan. Could it be that the Zhang clan eldest young master they mentioned as Big Brother Zhang? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up, and at the same time, he walked out in large strides to stop the two people that were discussing animatedly. What are you doing? When they saw someone block their path, the two middle-aged men's expression were extremely unsightly. 636 Chapter 637, Zhang Shou Yuan. I don't have any ill intentions. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and said, I just want to ask the both of you, is the Zhang clan eldest young master both of you are speaking about called Zhang Shou Yang? Yes. The two middle-aged men's expressions eased up when they saw Duan Lingtian was only asking this, and they nodded. Do both of you know where the Zhang clan is? Duan Lingtian asked again. You know the Zhang clan's eldest young master. Meanwhile, the two middle-aged men reacted to the meaning behind Duan Lingtian's words, and their expressions contained slight seriousness mixed within. No matter if it was the Zhang clan or the Zhang eldest young master, they were both existences that were unreachable to the two middle-aged men. Yes, he's my friend, it's already been over 2 years since I saw him. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that the two middle-aged men before him looked at him with a completely different gaze. It was a gaze that contained slight reverence. The Zhang clan estate of the Zhang clan is over there. In next to no time, the two middle-aged men hurriedly guided Duan Lingtian on the path towards the Zhang clan. Thank you. After he found of the location of the Zhang clan, Duan Lingtian thanked the two middle-aged men before walking over with large strides. In next no time, Duan Lingtian arrived outside a spacious estate. This Zhang clan estate is slightly smaller than the Feng clan estate. Looks like in the capital of the Darken Dynasty, there's still a certain distance between the Zhang clan and the Feng clan. Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. At the entrance to the Zhang clan estate, Duan Lingtian was stopped by a few Zhang clan guards. What are you here for? The Zhang clan guards looked vigilantly at Duan Lingtian. I'm look for Big Brother Zhang, Zhang Shou Yang. Duan Lingtian nodded to the Zhang clan guards and spoke directly. You're a friend of the eldest young master. Instantly, the Zhang clan guards' expressions eased up, and they looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes that contained slight respect. The eldest young master was a legend to members of the Zhang clan like them. At that time before the eldest young master left the clan, he was the top genius of the Zhang clan. This time, because of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, their eldest young master had returned to participate in the dynasty martial competition, and it caused the Zhang clan's confidence to increase greatly. As far as everyone in the Zhang clan was concerned, with their eldest young master's strength, becoming eminent in the dynasty martial competition and obtaining the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties wasn't difficult. Now, when they found out that the violet-clothed young man before them was the friend of their eldest young master, they naturally didn't dare be disrespectful to him. What, all of you suspect that I'm a fraud? Your eldest young master ought to be home right. Bring me to go see him, and if I'm a fraud, he'll be able to discern it with a single glance. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. No, we didn't mean it like that. Exactly, we believe young master, we believe. The Zhang clan guards were instantly in a panic when they heard Duan Lingtian. What a joke. If the eldest young master found out that they doubted his friend, in his rage, wouldn't they be punished severely? Young master, I'll bring you along to see the eldest young master. In next to no time, a Zhang clan guard stood out to speak respectfully to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded and followed behind the Zhang clan guard to enter the Zhang clan estate. Under the lead of the guard, Duan Lingtian moved all the way through the Zhang clan estate to finally arrive outside a courtyard. In the courtyard, there just happened to be a servant girl walking with a broom, and she'd obviously just cleaned the courtyard. Is the eldest young master here? The Zhang clan guard asked the servant girl. The eldest young master is admiring flowers by the lake with the eldest young mistress, said the servant girl. Subsequently, the Zhang clan guard brought along Duan Lingtian to head over to the other side. They moved through to finally arrive near a vast lake. This lake was obviously intentionally dug by the Zhang clan. It occupied a vast area, and there was a winding stone bridge atop the lake. The eldest young master is over there. The Zhang clan guard brought Duan Lingtian to arrive by the lake, and he spoke to Duan Lingtian while looking towards a pergola at the center of the lake. Duan Lingtian nodded. He'd noticed since long ago that at the pergola in the distance was a man and woman standing in it, and they were admiring the carpet of flowers at the side of the pergola. This man and woman weren't unfamiliar to Duan Lingtian, it was precisely Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong. You go ahead about your business, I'll go over myself. Duan Lingtian nodded to the Zhang clan guard before stepping onto the stone bridge and heading towards the pergola at the center of the lake. The Zhang clan guard didn't leave directly, and he stood on the spot as he silently watched Duan Lingtian walk towards the pergola. Now, he wanted to confirm if this violet-clothed young man knew his Zhang clan's eldest young master. If the young man didn't know his Zhang clan's eldest young master, then it was equivalent to him bringing over a time bomb. If the eldest young master were to become enraged because of this, he would surely land in serious trouble. Looks like I thought too much. In next to no time, this Zhang clan guard saw that the eldest young master in the pergola move over excitedly to greet the violet-clothed young man after he saw him. Meanwhile, he set his mind at rest and turned around to leave. At the side of the pergola, Duan Lingtian looked at the white-robed young man that moved over to greet him. Big brother Zhang. Haha, brother Lingtian, you've finally come. Zhang Shouyang walked over with large strides to arrive before Duan Lingtian, and his face revealed a brilliant smile. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian was led into the pergola by Zhang Shouyang. Sister-in-law. Duan Lingtian looked at Wang Chong who was within the pergola and lightly smiled as he greeted her. Wang Chong smiled in reply, and then said sensibly, both of you have already not seen each other for a long time, sit down and have a good chat, I'll go prepare some fine wine and delicacies for the both of you. As she spoke, Wang Chong turned and left. Big brother Zhang, you're truly fortunate to meet such a wonderful person like sister-in-law. As he looked at Wang Chong's figure that vanished into the distance, Duan Lingtian praised. When we talk about fortune, how can I compare to brother Lingtian? An outstanding woman like little sister Li Fei is only one of your two fiancés. Zhang Shouyang shook his head. What, big brother Zhang, you want to look for another one? Duan Lingtian joked. FK off. Don't get me into trouble, kid. Zhang Shouyang glared at Duan Lingtian, and then he called Duan Lingtian over to sit before the stone table in the pergola. Brother Lingtian, you've probably been here for a long time, right? Why have you only come to look for me now? Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Lingtian as he asked. Duan Lingtian laughed embarrassedly. Although I arrived at the Darkened Dynasty's capital long ago, I also left for a period of time, I've only just returned. Zhang Shouyang came to a sudden understanding, and then he said with a smile, I heard that amongst the young geniuses from the Darkstone Empire, there are a few more people with strengths that are not bad. There's one who's called Mozan that had obtained the honor of being the #1 young expert in the Darkstone Empire during the Young Genius competition half a year ago. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. Half a year ago, during the Darkstone Empire's Young Genius competition, Mozan was the last to make an appearance, and he used his cultivation at the 3rd level of the Void Initiation stage to suppress all the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire. At that time, even Duan Lingtian didn't dare rashly go against him. Of course, it was only at that time. Presently, Duan Lingtian felt that he wasn't afraid of Mozan any longer. Unless Mozan had fortuitous encounters like him, it would be impossible for Mozan to compare to him. Right now, his cultivation had already broken through to the 5th level of the Void Initiation stage, and his spiritual force had even attained the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage. So long as a 7th level Void Initiation stage martial artist wasn't an inscription master, it would be impossible for the martial artist to escape the fate of being affected by the illusory space construct by his soul skill, Thousand Illusions. Moreover, relying on the wind concept fragment, at the same time that Duan Lingtian's cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds, his comprehension in wind concept wasn't slow in the slightest. Presently, Duan Lingtian's elementary wind concept had already been comprehended to the 5th level. 5th level Void Initiation stage cultivation and a 5th level wind concept, coupled with a 7th level Void Initiation stage spiritual force, it was sufficient for Duan Lingtian to dominate the various young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire. If one were to speak about the person that he feared the most amongst the 9 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, it would undoubtedly be his good friend, Su Li. Su Li possessed a mysterious and unfathomable master. Presently, Su Li's cultivation would probably not be at the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage like he saw before. After Su Li, Duan Lingtian feared Long Yun quite more. Long Yun possesses a master as well, and his master isn't much inferior to Su Li's master. Perhaps, Long Yun's current strength has already almost caught up to Mozan. Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. As far as Duan Lingtian was concerned, unless Mozan had the fortuitous encounters that he, Su Li, and Long Yun possessed, otherwise, it would be difficult for Mozan to surpass the three of them in Mozan's entire lifetime. Do you have the confidence to defeat him now? Zhang Shouyang stared at Duan Lingtian with a gaze that contained deep meaning. I don't dare speak about confidence, I'll only know after I try. Duan Lingtian shrugged and spoke modestly. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian said with a smile, Big Brother Zhang, I heard that your cultivation had already broken through to the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage now. Half a year later, before the Dynasty Martial competition arrives, you even might be able to break through to the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage. Zhang Shouyang smiled lightly. Not necessarily, presently, I've only touched the threshold to the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage, and there's still a period of distance before I'm able to break through. Big Brother Zhang, you're being modest. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and then he asked curiously. Big Brother Zhang, how about your Earth concept? Right at this moment, a sudden voice interrupted Duan Lingtian. Big Brother, I heard your friend has come over. In the distance, a calm voice sounded out. The voice sounded calm, yet Duan Lingtian was able to sense a trace of unobvious envy and hate within it. Duan Lingtian raised his head and looked over. A robust young man around the age of 30 that wore blue clothes and had a medium stature walked over with large strides, and in the blink of an eye, he'd arrived into the pergola at the center of the lake. Meanwhile, Zhang Shouyang stood up and glanced indifferently at the person that had arrived before introducing to Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, this is my second brother, Zhang Shouyuan. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded to the robust young man, Zhang Shouyuan. No matter what, this person was the second brother of Zhang Shouyang, and he couldn't be discourteous. But in next to no time, the smile on Duan Lingtian's face froze. When faced with Duan Lingtian's greeting, not only did Zhang Shouyuan pay no attention to it, he instead stretched out his hand to dig his ears as a wisp of disdain suffused his face. 637 Chapter 638, Strange Scene. Even the calmest person would have a time when they got enraged. Zhang Shouyuan's attitude caused Duan Lingtian's brows to be unable to refrain from frowning. This is Big Brother Zhang's second brother. Right at this moment, a voice transmission clearly entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Brother Lingtian, this is my second brother of the same father but different mother. Since we were young, he's always refused to accept my superiority and would make it difficult for me at every turn. This time, my sudden return has seized his limelight, and he's become even more dissatisfied. But his strength is inferior to me, so he doesn't dare directly offend me. Actually, he's treating you like this now because he's intentionally making it difficult for me, so you don't have to care about it. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was Zhang Shouyang's voice transmission. So they have different mothers. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. He was wondering, with Zhang Shouyang's straightforward character, how could Zhang Shouyang have such a brother? So it turned out that they grew up drinking different milk. It was understandable now. Big Brother Zhang, don't worry, I won't go the extent of fussing over it with him. Duan Lingtian shrugged and replied via voice transmission. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out to envelop Zhang Shouyuan. At the first possible moment, he detected Zhang Shouyuan's cultivation. 6th level of the Void Initiation stage. Needless to say, although Zhang Shouyuan was slightly arrogant, his strength and natural talent was not bad. His age wasn't much older than the Darkstone Empire's young genius, Mozan, but his cultivation instead seemed to surpass Mozan. Big Brother, sit, also this, what was it again? Zhang Shouyuan asked Zhang Shouyang to sit before looking at Duan Lingtian and frowning as he dug his ears. Sorry, my memory isn't good. I've forgotten your name. You won't mind introducing yourself once more, right? Zhang Shouyuan looked at Duan Lingtian and his eyes narrowed as he asked with a smile. Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Zhang Shouyuan as he spoke word by word. Duan Lingtian, your name isn't bad, it's arrogant enough. I only wonder if you have the qualifications to possess such an arrogant name. Zhang Shouyuan stared at Duan Lingtian as flowing lights flickered in his eyes, and there was no lack of provocation within his gaze. It's only a name, is there any need of qualification? Duan Lingtian shook his head and sat down by himself before looking at Zhang Shouyang. Big Brother Zhang, we parted hastily the last time, and I didn't have the chance to properly get together with you. Once sister-in-law brings over the fine wine and delicacies she went to prepare, we won't stop until we get drunk today. Alright, I'll enjoy to the fullest with Brother Ling Tian today. Zhang Shouyang withdrew the gaze he glared at Zhang Shouyuan with, and he looked at Duan Ling Tian as he laughed heartily, whereas, the face Zhang Shouyuan who stood at the side went completely dark. What an arrogant kid! Zhang Shouyuan stared at Duan Ling Tian with fierce lights flickering in his eyes. As far as he was concerned, a kid around the age of 25 actually daring to express displeasure towards him was simply courting death. Does this kid really think that I, Zhang Shouyuan, am a weakling? Big brother. Zhang Shouyuan looked at Zhang Shouyang and lightly smiled as he asked. Earlier, although I was quite a distance away, I still heard you and this friend of yours discussing the dynasty martial competition. He seemed to be a young genius that has become eminent in the Darkstone Empire and has come to participate in our Darken Dynasty's martial competition. So what if he is? Zhang Shouyang frowned and spoke slightly impatiently. He knew this second brother of his extremely well, and he faintly realized what this second brother of his intended to do now. Moreover, it was even targeted at Duan Ling Tian. His heart jerked and he prepared himself. So long as this second brother of his dared act rashly, he would stop it at the first possible moment. In this way, although this friend of Big Brother's is young, his strength is extremely high. It's even to the extent that his natural talent might even be stronger than Big Brother. Zhang Shouyuan continued. Brother Ling Tian's natural talent is naturally stronger than mine, said Zhang Shouyang. I truly never imagined that I, Zhang Shouyuan, would have the fortune to see a person that Big Brother feel himself to be inferior to. This is Brother Ling Tian, right? Zhang Shouyuan's face revealed a brilliant smile, and he looked at Duan Ling Tian in the end. Brother Ling Tian, my big brother acknowledged that his natural talent is inferior to you. I presume that even though you're young, your cultivation is surely extremely extraordinary. You're too kind. Duan Ling Tian nodded indifferently. The depths of Zhang Shouyuan's eyes flickered with a flowing light that expressed his feelings from his scheme being successful, and he went straight to the point. Brother Ling Tian, while my sister-in-law hasn't brought the fine wine and delicacies over, how about we spar? I really want to experience your strength. At this moment, Zhang Shouyuan had completely exposed his intentions. Earlier, his constant flattery of Duan Ling Tian was actually only foreshadowing, and what he was waiting for was precisely this moment. The moment to make Duan Ling Tian be unable to refuse his challenge to a spar. HMPH. A 6th level void initiation stage martial artist like you wants to bully a 20-plus-year-old young man. Don't you feel ashamed? Finally, Zhang Shouyang couldn't watch any longer. Big brother, your words are mistaken. I'm only admiring Brother Ling Tian's natural talent and strength, and I only want to have a spar with him. Zhang Shouyuan shook his head and stared at Duan Ling Tian as he said slowly, Brother Ling Tian, are you willing to give me face and spar with me? During the spar between the two us, we will stop before injuring the other and be sure not to harm to friendly feelings between us. Of course, if Brother Ling Tian doesn't dare, then forget it. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyuan's voice became strange and was slightly sarcastic. Brother Ling Tian, ignore him. Zhang Shouyuan's voice transmission entered into Duan Ling Tian's ears. He simply wants to use you to strike a blow at me. If you agree to his request, then you'll have fallen in his trap. But Zhang Shouyang's persuasion was obviously useless. Your big brother Zhang's second brother, so since you've spoken, I naturally won't refuse. I agree to spar with you. Duan Ling Tian looked at Zhang Shouyuan and spoke word by word. Haha, good. Brother Ling Tian is straightforward as expected. Zhang Shouyuan laughed loudly, and his eyes were filled with a sheen that reflected his scheme had been successful. Subsequently, Zhang Shouyuan looked towards the surroundings and said to Duan Ling Tian. Brother Ling Tian, even though we're stopping before injuring the other, but because this space is too small, if I accidentally hit you into the lake and cause you to be soaked through like a chicken in soup, you have to excuse me. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyuan's eyes were filled with a ridiculing expression. It was as if he'd already seen Duan Ling Tian being blasted down the lake and drowned in water to become like a chicken soaked in soup. Of course. Duan Ling Tian nodded, and then said, but if you accidentally fall into the lake, I hope you can excuse me as well. Sure. Zhang Shouyuan laughed as he replied, and he thought that Duan Ling Tian said this because Duan Ling Tian was trying to go at odds with him. He really didn't take a 20-plus-year-old young man seriously. As far as he was concerned, after Duan Ling Tian found out of his cultivation from his big brother, yet still dared agree to spar with him was none other than Duan Ling Tian being unable to refuse due to being unable to accept the loss of face and was unable to refuse. Actually, Duan Lingtian had already prepared himself to be beaten. What he needed to do now was to act in accordance with Duan Lingtian and properly beat Duan Lingtian up, and make Duan Lingtian enter the lake to sober up. In this way, he would be able to feel proud before his big brother. If you want to blame something, then blame yourself for being acquainted with Zhang Shouyang and even became friends with him. Zhang Shouyuan's heart was filled with boundless ruthlessness. Since it's like this, then place start. Duan Lingtian left his seat and stood at the side of the pergola, and then he waited for Zhang Shouyuan to attack after nodded to Zhang Shouyuan. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian stood on the spot and remained unmoving like a mountain. Brother Lingtian is direct as expected. Since it's like this, then I won't hold back. Zhang Shouyuan replied before the origin energy on his body pulsated and even converged onto his legs. For a time, the energy of heaven and earth roiled above his head, and in the end, it transformed into 8 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes that coiled down from above. Instantly, Zhang Shouyuan moved. Swoosh! His entire body seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that flashed straight towards Duan Lingtian. At the side of the 8 ancient horned dragon silhouettes above him, another 5 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared. Within the raging origin energy on Zhang Shouyuan's body, traces of blue-colored energy seemed to have appeared. 5th level water concept. The instant that Zhang Shouyuan attacked, Zhang Shouyang's heart went up to his throat, and his expression became serious. He didn't know why Duan Lingtian would so directly accept his second brother's challenge. But with Duan Lingtian's persistence, it wasn't good for him to dissuade Duan Lingtian. Moreover, as far as he was concerned, this was only a spar, and Duan Lingtian would at most suffer some light injuries and nothing serious. If his second brother dared attack ruthlessly, then he wouldn't stand idly by. Bring it on. When he saw Zhang Shouyuan seem to have transformed into a gust of wind that blew over, Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted as 2 strands of indistinct dim lights seemed to appear within. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force pierced into the soul brand in the depths of his soul. 1,000 illusions. Instantly, Duan Lingtian utilized his soul skill. An illusory space was constructed by Duan Lingtian, and it swept out to envelop Zhang Shouyuan who was pouncing at him. In this instant, the world that Zhang Shouyuan was in underwent a tremendous change. Zhang Shouyang was completely stunned when he saw the scene before him. Heavens! What have I seen? The attack of his second brother, Zhang Shouyuan, covered the heaven and earth and was just about to descend onto Duan Lingtian and blast Duan Lingtian flying when at this critical moment, Zhang Shouyuan moved away himself. More precisely speaking, Zhang Shouyuan had turned to attack the air at the side, and he barely avoided Duan Lingtian who stood on the spot without moving. What's going on? The strange scene before him caused Zhang Shouyang to be dumbstruck. What's second young master doing? Meanwhile, many Zhang clan servants that were all around the pergolas at the center of the lake stopped the work they were doing, and stared blankly at the scene before them. The scene before them was difficult to imagine, and they only felt disbelief. In next to no time, everyone saw. Duan Lingtian, your strength is indeed not bad, but I won't continue playing with you. Zhang Shouyuan who ceaselessly turned about to smash chaotically at the surrounding air suddenly shouted out explosively, and his entire body seemed to have transformed into a cannonball that fiercely charged out of the pergola. 638 Chapter 639, The Patriarch's Wife. At this moment, a grade 5 spirit saber had appeared out of thin air in Zhang Shouyuan's hand, and the spirit saber whistled out in the air to slash towards the lake with large movements. Instantly, the sword light that was condensed from origin energy combined with his 5th level water concept whistled out in the air to descend into the lake, and it forcefully split the water in the lake apart. Bang! Waves rose up to drench Zhang Shouyuan, who stood in the sky. Second young master wouldn't have gone mad, right? The onlooking Zhang clan servants felt a chill run down their spines when they saw this scene, and their backs went cold. When had they seen a scene like this? In next to no time, Zhang Shouyuan attacked once more, and his saber light whistled out to descend into the lake. Instantly, a wave rose from the lake once more and splashed towards the surroundings. For a time, the group of servants in the surroundings of the pergola were completely drenched by the waves. But no one paid any attention to this. The gazes of everyone was still on the Zhang clan's second young master, Zhang Shouyuan. What's going on? In the pergola at the center of the lake, Zhang Shouyang looked at the scene before him and was unable to recover from his shock for a long time. When Zhang Shouyang saw his second brother attack the air and lake as if he'd gone mad, Zhang Shouyang had been completely stunned as well. In the end, he recovered from his shock, and he couldn't help but look at Duan Lingtian, who stood at the side. In next to no time, he noticed that Duan Lingtian was currently looking at his second brother with a calm expression, and Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by anything happening before him at all. Zhang Shouyang's heart couldn't help but tremble. Could all this have been controlled by brother Lingtian? For a time, traces of fear arose in Zhang Shouyang's heart. Being able to have a 6th level void initiation stage martial artist under his control without even lifting a hand. What ability was this? For the first time, he felt that Duan Lingtian was unfamiliar. He still remembered that when he met Duan Lingtian for the first time a few years ago, it was in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's ancient city of Everlast's Eternal Jade Restaurant. At that time, Duan Lingtian was only a martial artist that was beyond ordinary in his eyes. At that time, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pressure even if he faced 100 or 1,000 Duan Lingtians. But now, for the first time in history, he felt slightly powerless when facing Duan Lingtian. That young man from all those years ago had grown to such an extent now, and it caused him to be completely unable to completely fathom Duan Lingtian. If this ability of brother Lingtian is able to affect me, then I'll probably not be a match for him. Zhang Shouyang couldn't help but gasp. Along with his second brother's seemingly insane actions, the fear in his heart grew deeper and deeper, and it was difficult to remove. Duan Lingtian, do you dare to not dodge? Suddenly, Zhang Shouyang shouted out explosively. Under the gazes of everyone present, Zhang Shouyang, who floated in the sky above the lake, looked down at the lake that was completely empty, and a cold light arose in his eyes. Let me see if you can keep fleeing. Swoosh. In the next moment, the surroundings of Zhang Shouyang's body was coiled with origin energy that was suffused with traces of azure-colored energy, causing his entire body to seem as if it was covered in a slight layer of mist, and he was like a water dragon as he crashed down into the lake. Zhang Shouyang, who didn't put up an origin energy barrier to keep the lake water out, became like a chicken soaked in soup. Om. While within the lake, Zhang Shouyang didn't stop attacking, and the spirit saber in his hand still swept out aimlessly towards his surroundings. Instantly, the lake water in the entire lake sprayed up to envelop the entire lake and bank of the lake, and it was as if it was raining. Only the pergola at the center wasn't affected. Duan Lingtian, Zhang Shouyang roared ceaselessly, and every time the spirit saber in his hand flashed out, he would shock out as if he was using this to boost his courage. The Zhang clan servants that surrounded the lake and spectated grew more and more in number. What is second young master doing? Second young master wouldn't have really lost his mind, right? He probably hasn't. According to me, he'd probably performing an act of artificial Ra'an for the eldest young master and the eldest young master's friend. With the relationship between second young master and eldest young master, do you think that that's even a possibility? The group of servants discussed animatedly. The surrounding spectators grew more and more in number, and in the end, even many Zhang clan disciples had heard the news and come over. When they saw the scene before them, they were completely dumbstruck. Second young master. Many people charged into the lake with intentions of waking Zhang Shouyang up. But unfortunately, they hadn't even approached when Zhang Shouyang's saber assaulted them, and they could only hurriedly retreat while their expressions went ghastly pale from fright. What's wrong with second young master? Why does he not even know us anymore? When he saw us, it was as if he'd seen his prey, and he wished for nothing more than to swallow us up. Could it be that it's really as they've said, the second young master has lost his mind? The group of Zhang clan disciples looked at each other in bewilderment. In the end, the surroundings of the lake was filled with people, and all of them were watching Zhang Shouyang perform. Yuan. Suddenly, a middle-aged woman in luxurious clothes flashed over, and in the blink of an eye, she'd arrived near Zhang Shouyang. Her expression was especially unsightly. But when faced with the middle-aged woman, Zhang Shouyang still ceaselessly attacked with his saber, and the saber lights whistled out to sweep towards the middle-aged woman. Whoosh! With a raise of her hand, a spirit sword appeared in the middle-aged woman's hand, and origin energy raged as sword concept followed behind it like a shadow to obliterate Zhang Shouyang's sword light. The middle-aged woman's cultivation surpassed Zhang Shouyang slightly and had already stepped into the 7th level of the void initiation stage. Not only that, she'd also comprehended 6th level sword concept, and when it was combined with her grade 5 spirit sword, she was able to suppress Zhang Shouyuan's strength. Second young master has really gone mad. That's his own mother. Many spectating Zhang clan members were stunned when they saw this scene. The middle-aged woman that had appeared now was none other than the current wife of the patriarch, and the biological mother of Zhang Shouyuan. Of course, this was the Zhang clan's patriarch's second wife. His first wife, the biological mother of the Zhang clan's eldest young master Zhang Shouyang, had passed away from sickness many years ago. Yuan, look properly, I'm your mother. Every time the middle-aged woman made a move, a sword light would shoot out like a shadow to destroy Zhang Shouyuan's attacks, and she ceaselessly wanted to awaken Zhang Shouyuan, but Zhang Shouyuan paid no attention to her. At this moment, Zhang Shouyuan seemed as if he was possessed. What exactly is going on? The middle-aged woman's expression was unsightly to the extreme. Without any alternative, the spirit sword in his hand shook and a dazzling sword light shot out explosively to sweep towards her own son, Zhang Shouyuan, and suppress him. Subsequently, she moved close to Zhang Shouyuan, putting away her sword as she raised her hand, and then she directly knocked Zhang Shouyuan out. The farce came to an end at this point, whereas, the lake that waves ceaselessly rose out from him had gradually returned to calm. Second mother. In the pergola at the center of the lake, Zhang Shouyang glanced indifferently at the middle-aged woman and nodded, and it could be considered to be a greeting. What's going on? The woman stared at Zhang Shouyang and spoke with a low voice as cold lights leapt about in the depths of her eyes. You're asking me? How would I know? Zhang Shouyang shook his head lightly and spoke indifferently. You. The woman's expression is unsightly to the extreme when she saw Zhang Shouyang was so perfunctory, and she was angered to the point her body started trembling. The Duan Lingtian that my son kept shouting out ought to be this person by your side, right? In the end, the woman's gaze descended onto the violet-clothed young man by Zhang Shouyang's side and asked in a low voice. Exactly. Zhang Shouyang nodded, and then he lightly smiled as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, let me introduce you. This is the Zhang clan's patriarch's wife who is also my second mother. Zhang Shouyang placed special emphasis on the words, second mother. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that the relationship between Zhang Shouyang and this second mother of his wasn't good. Of course, he didn't feel that Zhang Shouyang was unfilial. Since this middle-aged woman appeared to knock Zhang Shouyuan out and speak to Zhang Shouyang, she'd always been assuming a haughty air and had an appearance of superiority. Although he was only an onlooker, he felt slightly uncomfortable in his heart as well. Perhaps, in the eyes of this middle-aged woman, only the son that was related to her by blood was her son, and she would be very doting upon him, whereas, the son of the patriarch's previous wife like Zhang Shouyang was like a stranger in her eyes. So it's Madam, Duan Lingtian is honored. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the woman as he spoke slowly, and his tone didn't contain any fluctuation of feelings, as if he was speaking with a person of no great importance. Duan Lingtian. The woman glared fixedly at Duan Lingtian and spoke with a low voice. Exactly what happened earlier? Why was my son like that? Were you behind all of this? The woman's words were filled with a questioning tone, and people who weren't aware of the situation would think that she was interrogating a prisoner. Duan Lingtian frowned as the woman's haughty appearance caused him to be extremely displeased. But, when he heard the woman, Duan Lingtian still started laughing. Madam, you think too highly of me. Do you think it's possible for me to have that ability? The woman took a deep breath and the bewilderment in her eyes grew deeper. Even until now, she couldn't wrap her head around the scene from before. Why had her son suddenly become like that? Earlier, her son was like a madman that was playing with water within the lake, and it was even like he was putting on a monkey show for others, causing even her who was his mother to feel she'd lost all face. Then why did my son shout out your name? What happened before this? The woman obviously didn't intend to let Duan Lingtian off so readily, and she questioned a step further with a low voice. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised when faced with the repeated questioning of the woman, and he said unhurriedly, this matter must start from when I looked for Big Brother Zhang to catch up. Madam, you want me to speak of it in detail? As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian glanced at the woman with a spurious smile on his face. Speak, the woman grunted in a low voice. Duan Lingtian nodded and said slowly, today, I arrived at the Zhang clan to catch up with Big Brother Zhang. The second young master arrived suddenly and it slightly exceeded the expectations of me and Big Brother Zhang. After Big Brother Zhang introduced me and second young master seemed to be extremely interested in me, and he spoke of wanting to spar with me. When he spoke up to here, Duan Ling Tian paused briefly. 639 Chapter 640, Wine Gourd. The gazes of the surrounding people became slightly peculiar for a time. They never expected that a thing like this had happened earlier. But when they recalled the scene from before, they realized that the development of the matter seemed to not be so smooth. A situation seemed to have arisen on the side of the second young master, Zhang Shou Yuan. Second young master cordially invited me to spar and said that we wouldn't injure each other, so it was naturally not good for me to refuse. Duan Ling Tian continued. But who would have expected that right when second young master attacked me, he suddenly seemed to have been possessed by something and abandoned me to instead charge to the surface of the lake. He constantly shouted my name, yet constantly attacked the lake, and it was as if he'd lost his mind. As he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed and looked at the woman. Madam, could it be that the second young master is really insane? You, the woman was angered to the point her expression went extremely unsightly, and she kept having the feeling that the course of the events was absolutely not so simple. She understood her son better than anyone, and she could be sure that her son wasn't insane. Everything that happened earlier was absolutely related to the violet-clothed young man before her. But now, even if she spoke of her views, would anyone believe her? Not to mention others, even she herself found it difficult to explain why the young man was able to make her son suddenly seem as if he'd gone insane and charge into the lake by himself before attacking the air and lake water like a madman. You've really made a good friend. In the end, the woman glared at Duan Ling Tian before glancing deeply at Zhang Shouyang, then she brought along the fainted Zhang Shouyuan and slightly gnashed her teeth and spoke as she left. For a time, the surrounding crowd sounded out with a wave of sighs. Second young master surely didn't have any good intentions when he asked this guest of the eldest young master to spar with him, and it was even to the extent that he wanted to use this to strike a blow at the eldest young master. This isn't difficult to guess. But, perhaps second young master himself didn't know beforehand that the outcome would be like this. Yeah, if he knew beforehand, he surely wouldn't act in that way. This time, the second young master has really lost face. Didn't you see how dark the madam's face was earlier? The surrounding crowd of spectators all guessed what had happened today. The second young master and the eldest young master being on bad terms was no secret in the Zhang clan. All of you, disperse. Zhang Shouyang's face revealed a brilliant smile when he saw the woman being forced to such a state, and then he looked at the crowd around the lake as he instructed. Instantly, the surrounding crowd dispersed. For a time, the entire lake and the pergola at the center of the lake had recovered its calm. Brother Ling Tian, I truly never imagined that after not seeing you for so many years, you actually have mastered such a terrifying ability. You don't even have to make a move against a 6th level void initiation stage martial artist before being able to control him in the grasp of your palm. Zhang Shouyang once again gestured for Duan Ling Tian to sit before being unable to refrain from sighing. It was just luck. Duan Ling Tian spoke modestly. Brother Ling Tian, you're too modest. I've never seen or heard of that method of yours. Looks like during the dynasty martial competition this time, it wouldn't be difficult for you to advance with your strength. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyang was filled with confidence towards Duan Ling Tian. I hope I can advance as well, and then go experience the young experts of the other 9 dynasties. Duan Ling Tian smiled. Presently, his cultivation was at the 5th level void initiation stage. If nothing unexpected happened, then by relying on origin stones, he ought to be able to break through to the 6th level of the void initiation stage before the dynasty martial competition began half a year from now. At that time, his spiritual force would advance to the 8th level of the void initiation stage. Perhaps, by executing the soul skill, Thousand Illusions, by relying on an 8th level void initiation stage spiritual force, it would be sufficient for me to become eminent in the Darkened Dynasty's martial competition. But during the dynasty martial competition, there would surely be no lack of experts from the various empires and dynasties amongst the spectating people. Amongst these people, there would surely be no lack of inscription masters. Their spiritual force will surely be on the competing young geniuses at all times. In the past, during the Young Genius competition in the Darkstone Empire and the Genius competition of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, although there were inscription masters present, but there weren't many. Moreover, the level of their spiritual force was limited and it was difficult for them see through the soul skill, Thousand Illusions, that I executed by combining my spiritual force with my soul brand. But in the Darkened Dynasty, there are surely inscription masters that are able to see through the soul skill I execute. once my soul skill, 1,000 illusions, is exposed, I'm afraid it would incur a calamity. Those inscription masters would surely be interested with the soul skill I possess. So during the Dynasty Martial competition, not only am I unable to utilize high-grade spirit weapons, I'm even unable to use the soul skill, 1,000 illusions. In his previous life, Duan Ling Tian was a mercenary that had walked out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood, and he knew the principle that the hearts of humans are vicious. In this life, he'd even fused with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, and his thinking was even more cautious. He wouldn't allow himself to be placed in unknown danger. So he made a decision. No matter if it was the Dynasty Martial competition or the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, if he didn't have sufficient certainty that it wouldn't be noticed by others, he wouldn't easily utilize the soul skill, 1,000 illusions. I hope that I can smoothly break through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage during the Dynasty Martial competition, otherwise, it would be difficult for me to become eminent in the martial competition. Duan Ling Tian sighed to himself. Now, I only hope that Pavilion Master Shang is able to help me obtain a spirit fruit used by Void Initiation stage martial artists before the Dynasty Martial competition begins, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. As for the ageless root, Duan Ling Tian didn't dare think about it. Of course, if he were to really be able to obtain the ageless root, Duan Ling Tian would surely be overjoyed. Obtaining the ageless root meant that he would be able to refine the rebirth pill. The medicinal strength of the rebirth pill was probably difficult to be absorbed by even a 10,000th with his current cultivation. But even if it's less than a 10,000th of the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill, it would surely be sufficient to allow him to advance by a few levels. I'm currently at the 5th level of the Void Initiation stage. If I'm able to consume the rebirth pill, I don't dare say that I'll be able to break through to the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage in a short period of time, but attaining the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage is without suspense. This was something that Duan Ling Tian was exceedingly sure about. The rebirth martial emperor had once consumed the rebirth pill, and he was extremely clear about how terrifying the medicinal strength of the rebirth pill was. But unfortunately, obtaining the ageless root isn't a simple thing. Presently, I don't dare think if I'll be able to obtain the ageless root before the Dynasty Martial competition. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. I only hope that I'll be able to obtain the ageless root before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties so that I can refine the rebirth pill, otherwise, it will be difficult for me to stand out and become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Not long after, Wang Chong brought along a few servant girls to carry the fine wine and delicacies and walked into the pergola in the center of the lake. Sister-in-law, sit down as well. When Duan Ling Tian saw the servant girls put down the fine wine and delicacies, he smiled as he gestured to Wang Chong. Wang Chong agreed and sat down by Zhang Shouyang's side, and then she looked at Zhang Shouyang with slight worry mixed between her brows. I heard the madam came over earlier. Wang Chong had obviously heard of what happened earlier, and she was clearly slightly afraid of the wife of the Zhang clan's patriarch. Yes, Zhang Shouyang nodded. There's no need to pay attention to her, even if she suspects brother Ling Tian caused the incident today, she doesn't have the slightest proof, and no one will believe her. Wang Chong set her mind at rest when she heard this. Big brother Zhang, sister-in-law, it's been a long time, a toast to both of you. Duan Ling Tian raised his wine cup and looked at Wang Chong and Zhang Shouyang as he lightly smiled. Haha, good, Zhang Shouyang laughed heartily as he hurriedly raised his wine cup and toasted. For a time, the atmosphere in the pergola at the center of the lake rose, and Duan Ling Tian, Zhang Shouyang, and Wang Chong chatted cheerfully. Has little sister Fei not returned yet? After 3 cups of wine, Wang Chong asked Duan Ling Tian. No, Duan Ling Tian shook his head and said with a smile, this time, I intend to use the opportunity of the martial competition of the 10 dynasties to head to the foreign lands. At that time, I'll go look for little Fei. Wang Chong nodded. Duan Ling Tian's words were undoubtedly filled with confidence towards himself, confidence that he would be able to become eminent in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and join a power of the foreign lands. At that time, you and I can go together. Zhang Shouyang laughed. After the 3 of them cleaned up the fine wine and delicacies, Duan Ling Tian looked at the wine gourd before Zhang Shouyang's waist, and his brows raised. Big brother Zhang, this wine gourd is your current weapon. You plan to use it against your enemies during the dynasty martial competition and the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Zhang Shouyang said with a smile, Brother Ling Tian, I seem to have introduced it to you all those years ago, right? Don't look down on it, it's a grade 5 spirit weapon. I know, Duan Lingtian nodded. At that time, Big Brother Zhang said that this wine gourd of yours is able to hold 10,000 pounds of wine, but the group of young geniuses in the Dynasty Martial competition surely possess grade 5 spirit weapons as well. Even if it's a grade 4 spirit weapon, I'm afraid many young geniuses would possess them. I know. Zhang Shouyang nodded, and then he sighed. Our Zhang clan gave me a grade 4 spirit weapon not long ago, but I've become accustomed to using this wine gourd, so I'm really not used to other grade 4 spirit weapons. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyang stretched out his hand to rub the wine gourd before his waist, and it was as if he was stroking his second lover. The status of the wine gourd in Zhang Shouyang's heart could be seen from this. Big Brother Zhang, have you not thought of asking a grade 4 weapons craftsman to help you raise the grade of this wine gourd? Duan Lingtian smiled as he asked. Of course, and I've even mentioned it to my father, but unfortunately, that grade 4 weapons craftsman that our Zhang clan is acquainted with is only skilled in refining sword or saber type grade 4 spirit weapons, and he isn't confident in being able to refine special grade 4 spirit weapons like this wine gourd. Zhang Shouyang spoke with slight pity. Big Brother Zhang, go look for some materials, and then give those materials and this wine gourd to me. In a few days, I'll return a completely new wine gourd to you. How about it? Said Duan Lingtian to Zhang Shouyang while constantly having a smile on his face. Zhang Shouyang was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian, and said with slight surprise, Brother Lingtian, you know a grade 4 weapons craftsman. Zhang Shouyang suddenly felt that the violet-clothed young man before him was truly more and more mysterious.